Before we dive in, though, there is one more thing we have to do, which is, I'm sorry, we got to check the stat screen one time for each character because, of course, we are doing unit analysis for Path of Radiance.
I see. So one time for each character. I guess that's fine.
Yeah.
I guess that's fine.
Yeah, just one time. Now, last time we played Thracia, and Reyson didn't know all the characters because he hadn't played the full game, but this is a game you've played many times, so I'm sure we both have a lot to say on all these units. I have done multiple tier lists of FE9 characters in the past. Like, I've done the big tier list. I've done an FE9 tier list review with 3 parts. So some of this might sound familiar, but of course there's going to be a little twist with the whole ignorance thing where, that might shake things up a little bit in how we use these characters. I think Ike is an actually excellent example of that, because normally I use Ike whenever convenient and I find him serviceable. Obviously he has his flaws in the context of this game. He doesn't have the greatest of bulk early on, he doesn't have the great damage outputs. He doubles axe users, but not a whole lot of other things. I guess lance users, but doesn't do much damage to those. He gets a personal sword later on that does some more damage, the Regal Sword, which is double effective against cavalry and armor knights, which is okay. But one wild thing about Ike that I'm a little bit worried about is, first of all, he gives the game over if he dies, so if I'm going to be careful with anyone, it's going to have to be Ike, but I do want to train him, and I'm only going to have limited Bexp to compensate for him not getting Bexp in combat, or getting combat XP. So I'm a little bit worried about that, and also the fact that Ike's damage output, I feel like whenever I play Path of Radiance, I'm always surprised, either positively or negatively, by Ike's combat forecasts. Usually I'm underwhelmed by what I see. I'm like, yeah, I can probably take on this low HP soldier, and he does 2 times 2 to 5 HP. I'm like, well, damn, Ike, that could have been better, So I'm a little bit worried about Ike, but I'm going to try to use him because the game sort of forces you into it. If only through the last boss fight, but also several other points. It's much convenient to have a trained Ike compared to not, but I'm a little bit afraid. How did you tackle this, Raisins?
So in Iron Man, I totally agree where Ike, he's not a very impressive lord, at least in Path of Radiance, in early game or in later game. However, with a lot of the Iron Man runs I do, usually what I do is I just funnel a bunch of XP into Ike at the start, and I just kind of use that as a cushion for the rest of the early game, right? Just, if you give him a heap of stats all at once, that's usually enough to sustain him for a while, or at the very least get him over this awkward 19 HP, this awkward 5 defense. Get him to a point where he's not going to get doubled by people, and he's got enough physical bulk to really withstand multiple rounds of combat. And also just to be careful with putting him near enemy units with Canto, especially in the early game, especially in Iron Man, just because that's the one time where you could actually end up fighting way too many units that you're not prepared for.
I know exactly one place where I'm definitely going to be tempted to do that, but I want to give him XP. It's going to be hard to hold back on it.
I mean, we'll have Bex by then too.
Yeah, that's true.
Furthermore, I should ask you when we're evaluating these units, 2 things. First off, it's just in a casual playthrough on hard mode, or are we talking about in the ignorance playthrough on hard mode? How we should be evaluating them?
Oh, evaluating. I mean,
kind
of like what we just
talking
did.
About these units.
Kind of like what we just did.
Okay, cool.
We just did absolutely perfect. Never change a thing.
Well, I don't want that guy in the comments to be like, "But on maniac mode."
Oh, maniac mode.
This is we're adjusting this to hard mode, right?
If you're playing on maniac mode, you know what you're doing. I trust your judgments.
Cool. I don't
have to tell you anything if you're willing to play this game on maniac mode.
Yeah, no, sounds good.
All right, anything to add before we exit this stat screen, and we'll never look at stats again until we get Bix or something, or level ups. Level ups, let us check chats, I guess.
Never once. I think so. This is just going to be kind of a blanket statement for all of our evaluations in Path of Radiance. I think should we talk about Bexp just very briefly, you and I?
I mean, maybe when we get it.
We've already spent a lot of time in this menu,
Yeah, when we get it, maybe we can talk about Bexp. Because
I think so.
It's going to be 8 chapters before we get it.
The reason I kind of wanted to introduce it now is because it's a big concept in Path of Radiance, and it really does sort of define how strong certain units are. The reason I bring it up is because I don't want to repeat every time we have a unit, if you give them a bunch of Bexp, then they're going to do great, because that's true for pretty much every unit.
True.
So when we talk about a unit, if we're kind of downplaying their abilities, it's usually because investing Bexp into them would mean that you're not investing Bexp into a different unit that could have possibly been using it better. So, just know that if we say some bad things about your favorite unit, and you go quickly to the comment section saying like, oh, if you give them Vex, they're great. You're right too. If you give them Vex, they're great. That's true for everybody. We're kind of going, I think we're probably going to approach it in a slightly more critical competitive lens and say like, well, who's the best person to be using your Vex spawn, or what results are you foregoing if you use your Vex on this unit as opposed to a different one?
Probably.
So we're just, this should be like a helpful thing for probably the evaluation supercut at the end that I know you're going to put together. Just saying like, guys, remember, Vex exists, it can make anyone good, but we're not gonna repeat that every time we have a unit evaluation. I think
that is fair. In the context of Ike, I think one thing that hurts him a little bit with Vex is he can't promote from just Vex him up, so it's going to be level 20 cap for a little bit as the game goes along. That will probably make him hard to snowball out of control to the point where he literally can't die. But it can be a good way to compensate for slacking off early game. But I do like the idea of making a cushion for him XP wise to make sure that he doesn't fall behind and actually keep up with the enemies. He also has an Earth affinity, which will be helpful if we support him with Oscar, for example, to make his death less likely, although I don't want to rely on it. With that said, we have spent 15 minutes exactly not playing the game. Shall we play the game?
Let's play the game.
I'm exiting the stat menu right now. We can never look at it again.
That's it.
Also, that stat window you just saw, that I didn't show the raisins, but he knows it's there. That showed all the growth. That was made by my designer, Rin, and it's amazingly looking, so thank you, Rin, for making it.
Okay, we're doing Titania first, that's fair.
Get used to the buttons here. Here we go. That's Titania.
There we go.
I think the default phrase for this playthrough is going to be, I don't know, so let's just use Titania. And that's going to be the repeat for like the first 8 chapters. If I'm ever super unsure on anything, especially kind of like with units like Ike and Boyd, when I'm not sure exactly what they're going to do, I'd rather just have Titania go in front and get them out of the way. That introduces another big problem, which is, what if Titania actually dies? Which I think can happen if you go really overboard. In the early game, it shouldn't be a big problem, because Titania is one of the best combat units in the entire series, at least for the first 10 or so chapters. She is really over-leveled because she starts off as a paladin rather than a cavalier, and she has the stats to match it roughly. Maybe not as good as like a trained paladin would be at this level, but her growths are also super amazing, as you can see on the side. So she'll keep up well and do that for pretty much the first half of the game. After that, she gets a little bit worse, relatively speaking, but she's still one of your better units at that point. Just no longer like the absolute best, but like one of the best. Never really falls off completely, but always really, really powerful. Using axes as well as lances, any axe you want and almost any lance you want. Counter, not super relevant in my opinion, but it's funny when it activates, so it still produces some good laughs every now and then. Also, Super Canto in this game, being able to move after attacking, in addition to trading, rescuing, dropping, all these other actions you can do, healing, also super helpful. Yeah, great crutch unit, gonna use this a lot.
And I know you called her a crutch unit, but you shouldn't feel bad about using Titania in the game. Like she's kind of fun to use. You just bop them with the steel axe, you bop them with the iron axe. I think there's some nuance to that, but I think with iron axe we should be pretty much fine this whole time. You mentioned earlier that her stats are pretty like low compared to what a level 1 paladin should be, and I think a part of that is because like in Tellius especially, or rather in Path of Radiance, and in Radiant Dawn this is a bit different. But in Path of Radiance, it's pretty common to get a unit to level 20 before promoting them. So, like, there are a few Master Seals in the game that you can use to promote them early, and maybe there are a few units whom we will promote early with Master Seals, just to show it off. But it's not that hard, and also not that uncommon to just get a unit to 20 in Path of Radiance, and then you level them up one more time, and that actually promotes them as well. So I think that's part of why, when you look at a promoted unit in Path of Radiance, not a pre-promote, like a regular promoted unit in Path of Radiance, like, holy crap, these stats are so big. Well, yeah, because you got a 20. Like, nothing wrong with that. But yeah, I don't think I mentioned it yet, actually, but Titania is good, by the way.
Yes.
I was introducing a bunch of qualifiers, but let me actually say. Analysis. Yeah, Titania good. Like, you kind of covered it. Like, she's a bit strong. I think I was like, oh, let me offer some context here, and then I realized, oh, you want my opinion? Yeah, she's good.
Yeah.
Who next?
I mean, if there's not much else to add, right? Like the rest of the playthrough will probably show why good, right? I guess. Like there's some like specifics to add, but I think we're gonna have so many enemy phases to talk about the details, right? That I think it's fine to just give a cursory overview like this if you really don't have much to add here, right?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay. How about Boyd. Get his growth
Good old
screen.
Boyd.
I will grab the buttons one day, I swear. Good old Boyd. I said instantaneous analysis that I think Boyd is a little bit unpredictable sometimes, kind of like with Ike, because this is not a game that I've played 100 times. This is a game I've played maybe 10 times, which there is a difference, trust me. And with Boyd especially, there's always a question of how much damage is he going to do, how much hit rate does he have, and does he double or get doubled? And all these things are question marks in my mind, because Boyd is not a unit I'm innately familiar with, which is why I want to use him, because I think it'll be interesting. But I can't guarantee survival if I'm going to try to use him, because, like I said, all these question marks, they'll make it a little bit shaky. Now, I'm making it look like Boyd isn't very good, because all these things sound like he's inconsistent. I do think he's good, especially as far as like foot units are concerned. His strength gets massive over the course of the game, and so does his HP, so he has a reasonable cushion, and he also gets like the ability to dodge enemies somewhat reliably late in the game, or so I've been told. And his speed, it starts off in a bit of a hole, because the Iron Axe weighs him down a little bit. He has... Come on, give me the thing. There you go. It weighs 10, so he's weighed down by 3 right now. So he has 3 speed. He actually physically cannot double enemies. But every time he grows strength, this is mitigated by 1 more point, because strength is constitution in this game compared to GBA. And his speed will also grow. He's like 45 speed growth and 60 strength. Like, let me just read these on screen, how nice this is.
Oh yeah.
So he basically is... He's very likely to get a point of speed in some way early on when holding the Iron Axe. And as he's grown out of that speed hole, he'll start doubling pretty reliably. And that, I think, can make him suffer from success, which is what I'm a little bit afraid of, especially because his defense growth is a little bit low, and his bases as well. But hopefully he'll get through this game as a promoted warrior and destroy everything in sight with the hand axe. That's what I'm hoping for. Or he can die horribly. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, as a warrior, even as just a fighter with a few more levels under him, and Intellius axes are just by far the best weapon type, like by a lot. It's really not even close. And so Boyd having access to those does just make him a really fun unit. I have a ton of fun every time I train out Boyd, and I can definitely understand why someone would be turned off to Boyd if like, oh, but it doesn't have Canto, it doesn't have this or that. Like, nah, come on, dude. Like, shut up, nerd. Like, it's Boyd. Look at him. So I do definitely agree that in the start, his stats are just like really terrible, but him having low strength or him having low speed as a result of being weighed down by his weapon just means that for a short period of time he actually has a lot more room to grow and a lot more potential for improvement, which means, again, if you just dig him out of this early speed hole, you'll start to see some vastly better results. There's a decent chance he gets like 2 AS on a level up. Like that's actually pretty immense. And yeah, aside from that, like, very fast unit, very dodgy unit, very bulky unit with his HP, and pretty likely to 1 round, I'd say. I don't really know much about hit rate issues in this one, but seeing as luck gives a whole point of accuracy and skill gives a whole 2 points of accuracy, I can't really imagine there being any hit rate issues with Boyd later on. So he's basically a fighter that doesn't have any of the late game weaknesses of the fighter. Like, he doesn't have any of the hit rate issues, he doesn't have any of the speed issues, if I recall. But it's just this awkward early game that he has to deal with.
Yes. 2 points I want to tack on real quick before I forget. One of these is the hit rate issues. I think that stems like this bit. If I look at his base hit rate right now, it's 87, which is before enemy avoid, which in this game I think is usually like early on it's going to be like 5 or 10 max probably, if that. I think the other thing that kind of messes it up is biorhythm. Right now it's on slightly above neutral, and he has Tempest, which doubles the effects of biorhythm, which basically means he gets, I think it's +5 or +10 hit and avoid, and so do the enemies randomly, depending on where this little graph is, because every turn is going to slide over a little bit, depending on what turn you are. So right now he's like up and it's going down, so it's going to get like worse as it goes on now, and it's going to get a little bit better as it goes on. I think that inconsistency can be a little bit painful, and that's where the hit rate's reputation comes from at the very least. I'm not sure how deserved it is, but that is an issue that he sometimes has. At some point you can remove Tempest and these effects will be mitigated, but that might be where it all comes from.
It'd be funny to keep it on, though.
The other thing, I mean, I might forget. The other thing I want to note real quick is you see this fighter band in his inventory. If you're not familiar with this and you've played this game, that's because this is also a new game plus feature. It changes growth rates a little bit. It buffs them a little bit by like 5 or 10% in 2 stats. I think the fighter band is one of the better ones. I think it gives, I think one of these
HP
is
strength.
Is speed strength?
No, HP strength. Sorry.
HP strength. Okay, I was worried there. I was like, I'm pretty sure there's none that give both strength and speed. That they actually balance it pretty well. There's a couple of these, and you get them if you play the game for a second time or third, etc. And they're pretty nice to have around. Not as good as, for example, the Night Ward, which you get later, but right now there's no reason to take them off. They do sell for quite a bit of money if you don't want them, so that's also really nice. We can make some more forges.
That's right.
So
and if you play it, I'd say don't tear your hair out over having the correct bands on it every time. All right, like they're way worse than Thracia scrolls, and you didn't need to do that for Thracia scrolls. Like it's 10 points of growth across 2 stats. Don't get too upset.
It's like
and one of them's HP.
If it drops, yeah. Like if you look at the growths on the side, they're plenty good, and Void has a lot of room to grow, for example. So don't worry, just keep them on whatever the way they are, and it's probably okay. Okay, shall we move on to our last candidate here?
Move on to our last unit. Yes.
Bosker.
The Bosker.
The Bosker. I like Oscar a lot in this unit still. I used to like him a lot more than I do. And like to put this in the tier perspective, I used to think he was S tier, and now I think he's like a low A tier or a high B tier. So still good. Just a little bit disappointing in the strength department, but almost everything else about Oscar is still really nice. Like he is a unit with super canto, just like Titania. He's able to rescue, drop, trade, heal, and then move again. He does have okay stats to hold himself up. He's pretty bulky, especially. 26 HP and 8 defense at base is good. And he also can use a Night Ward later on to get more bulk, because it'll give him +2 defense and res. His speed is usually good enough to double, especially with the help of the aforementioned Night Ward, which we'll probably talk about when we get it. I'm mentioning it way too much already. The big problem for me with Oscar is just that he lacks the strength to 2-hit kill most enemies, and that can sometimes get a little bit strength screwed. But generally, Oscar is going to be able to contribute at the very least, and maybe turn into something worth using long term. The other thing I'm looking out for with Oscar is the fact that he has an Earth affinity, which means if you build support with Ike, for example, they'll get really, really dodgy, and that's going to be really helpful in the context of this playthrough, where I won't know how much health people have, so it'll be nice to know if they're going to like just dodge a bunch of enemies. That's going to be really helpful. But we'll elaborate on supports later on when we do get them. But generally what I'm looking out for with Oscar, just going to try to use him, set up kills for others, maybe steal some kills for himself. He'll be fun to use. But I'm also a little worried about him, because he's also like, not sure how much damage this guy's going to do to this soldier, that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah, all these. I do say his offenses, I feel like, have a little bit of Ford syndrome, where he's a couple points of strength and a couple points of speed behind. So, and the issue with, like, being behind in two or more stats at once is that, like, you don't really catch up and turn online until you get a point in everything, which is actually not very likely. Like, you're gonna hit a few things, and then you're gonna hit a few things again, except you'll have some repeat stats, and then there's just gonna be that one stat that won't raise up. And I feel usually Oscar's going to run into that with either strength or speed. And I don't want to say this to completely disparage the unit. I think he's a lot of fun. I do use him a lot. I started using him less and less, though, mostly because, I don't know, Boyd's kind of fun. You're absolutely right about his bulk. His defense is amazing. Like, that, I think if I really had to write home, be like, you shook me awake, like, what's Oscar good at? I'm like, oh, defenses, I guess. Like, he's really good at that. So, definitely, at the very least, he won't die, but...
Try.
Well, okay.
That's the thing with units like Oscar, right? I feel like if I think a unit is durable, I'm going to put him on the front lines, and that's where people usually die. That's what I'm afraid of with Oscar.
Oh, true.
Like with Ike and Boyd, I'm going to be like a little bit careful, but Oscar, he can probably take it, and then he like crits an extra enemy and dies.
Oh no. Crits an extra enemy, how much damage does that really do, though?
You're right. Shall we get started?
Let's get started. Let's do a map.
Let's get this here.
What do you think of Rhys?
I think he's going to be important, more so than usual. I think usually with Rhys, it's just, okay, it's nice to have a healer early on, save ourselves the trouble of having to use a vulnerary. So instead of having Ike use a vulnerary, I can have Rhys heal him, and then Ike can use his turn to do whatever, probably use another vulnerary if he's really injured. But generally, he's kind of like an early game dancer that way if they're injured. Kind of like it, not quite, but he gives options. You can also shove people if you want him to. And I also have to protect him, because if he does get attacked, he is likely dead. I've noticed with Rhys in particular, sure, his durability is bad like most of the healers. His is exceptionally bad sometimes. His 0 defense is a bit of an exception here. 22 HP is like okay. His resistance is really good. If he's up against magic, he's fine. But physical enemies, they just kind of obliterate them, especially because he's level slower than most people. Since stab, XP, I think it's maybe slightly better than GBA, but not by a whole lot. So it levels slower than people who just gain like maybe like 40 XP per enemy phase, and that's if they're not like juggernauting their way through. So durability is kind of which is troublesome for this because I can't even tell if he's safe. Generally, I think the best way to tell if Rhys is safe is just check enemy ranges, and if he's not in range, he's safe. That's the main distinction.
He should be good.
But I do know from watching a bit of your streams, Reysons, and just from general that you can use healers to check for injured units and even check their HP sometimes. And that's super helpful if you can't check their stat screen or their HP bars. So I expect that at the very least will be useful until he inevitably dies to a mistake I make. So
that's right.
I'll enjoy him while I have him.
In the ignorance runs, I very often like leave the staff users move for last because it's like I need to be able to see people's HP.
Reverse dancing.
Basically my only way to. Yeah, pretty much. This is like basically my only way to do it. So I do think Rhys in particular is pretty good. You mentioned his bulk. I do think his 22 HP is impressive enough for the early game that he's usually not in any trouble. But of course later on in the game, like Tellius in particular, I think enemies can get somewhat inflated stats pretty quickly. So that 22 HP is not going to last him very long. I think Rhys is a great candidate for a Master Seal. Unlike, I think the other day I said a lot of characters in Path of Radiance who kind of promote by getting to level 21. Rhys is a great candidate to do the exact opposite, just get him to 10 and early promote him straight away. We haven't mentioned he's also the sole light magic user in the entire game. I've never found that to be particularly relevant. I mean, it's cool if you enjoy using light magic, by all means give him light magic. I've never found it to be particularly good. One other thing I want to mention with Rhys as well, which I think is kind of unique, is that he actually has pretty remarkably high build, which is important for shoving. We haven't been using it a whole lot, but until he has a mechanic called Shove, it basically gives infantry units some extra mobility, because you can shove infantry, and pretty much only infantry can shove infantry. There's a couple exceptions, like some big Lugus can shove mounted units, but it gives a lot of our infantry some extra move, and Rhys is able to shove a remarkably large portion of the cast, including pretty much all these early game people. I don't know if he can shove Boyd actually, but he can shove Ike, he can shove some later people we get like Shinon, and like just in general, it's actually a lot. Like you think he'd be like a little frail healer, but
yeah, that's his entire character.
He's kind of muscly. I don't know.
he's holding back. Yeah, I think in regards to durability, I'll add one more thing that I forgot to mention explicitly. I think the main cause of his bad durability might not necessarily be the raw bulk on HP. Like, I'm sure a lot of enemies will not be able to deal 22 or whatever HP he has at the time. I think for me, what will usually cause the problem is that he gets doubled. He only has 5 speed and 40% growth, which is, I think it's both 5 base and 40% is like what a lot of people would consider average or below average. And when you combine that with slow leveling, he's going to get doubled somewhere along the way. Not immediately, maybe, but that's usually how my Rhys dies, is getting doubled by enemies. But yeah, as long as it lasts, I will enjoy it. Shoving, I'll try to make use of it when I can, but it's pretty tricky when I usually want to attack, heal, rescue, or drop, but sometimes it comes up. The thing about light magic, the funny thing about Rhys and light magic is that after promotion he becomes a bishop so he can use it, but apparently it shares a weapon level with his staff rank, so if your Rhys survives combat, you could have him use like a lightning tome to attack, and it will simultaneously increase his weapon rank for staves. Like, he'll be able to use fortified because he spammed lightning basically, which is kind of funny. But
I hadn't thought about that. That's true.
Unfortunately, it does involve using Rhys in combat, which can be a risky affair if you do it close to an enemy, which is usually where combat happens. But you could do it if you wanted to, and there's a lot of good staffs in this game that you might want to be able to use. So I don't know, I like a staff utility. I don't know if he'll make it there. We'll see. How about we find out if he survives this one. As you might have seen, we have 2 new stat screens to look at, and I would give you a choice, but I think I set one of them up in advance, so we're going to take a look at Shinon first.
Alright, fair enough.
Here he is. As you can see, he comes with an iron sword that I gave to him. Yeah, that is just joking around. Oh, whoops, wrong one. There we go.
Whoa.
Okay.
There you go.
There you go. All good. All professional. Yes. So I think Shinon might be one of the units that changes the most between when they join and when they come back, because he's going to leave at one point. Right now he's like a sniper Jagan, and when he comes back he's like a sniper Est, which I think is really adorable because it's all in one unit. Like, look at his growths. Just for Reyson's sake, I'm going to read him out for a little bit. Like, 65% strength, 70 skill, 65 speed, 50 defense. He basically has his Radiant Dawn growth. In fact, I think these might be better than his Radiant Dawn growth, and he's really, really high stats in that game. I'm not going to say he's the best unit in that game, but he is insanely good stat-wise. And this game, his bases aren't too good. He only has 9 strength and 13 speed at base, but that's enough to like almost kill everything in here. In fact, I think At base, I think he one-rounds most of these enemies with the steel bow. We won't know until we try it out. Or you can not one-round with the iron bow. And the funny thing with Shinon is that he has crits as a sniper. He has, like, I think a plus 15 crit bonus. You can see he has 22 crit right now in the bottom left. Which means that even if you use the iron bow, there's a chance that Shinon says, "No, Ike, you do not get a kill. This kill is mine." And then he literally steals your XP.
He's so cool.
He would. And then
he's so cool.
Yeah, he's really funny. He's also good for baiting enemies towards him because he doesn't counterattack enemies, and he has provoke, which makes enemies attacking first. Okay, whatever. It makes them attack him basically on enemy phase, which can be annoying.
It's anti-vantage.
Yes, yes. I guess so.
No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, and then it's also sometimes it works against like enemy archers, and they'll get countered even though they didn't have to. They could attack like Gatrie instead, so that can be helpful. But generally, I use him to set up kills in the early game for other units with the iron bow. Maybe bait some enemies like I just said, and that's kind of about it. And then when he comes back, I tend to just bench him or even kill him because he respawns as an enemy. You have to like recruit him through a very elaborate process. So I do think he's pretty funny to use, and I kind of want to use him late game 1 point because the growth seemed really funny. But it's mostly a sniper jigging for you. What about you?
Yeah, I've never transitioned into using him later in the game. I've always just used him as sniper jigging. And for that purpose, he's just excellent. I mean, we also have to consider, you talked about his 9 strength, 13 speed. His bulk is also nothing to sneeze at, in my opinion. Like, 9 defense and 32 HP is... I don't know if it's... I can't remember if it's better than Titania's or not. And, of course, there's no way for us to check. But I remember it being pretty good. Like, you could throw him into enemies, and even with the provoke, he would still just... Like he'd come out with still, like, 28 HP. I'm like, dude, what the heck? What happened? And that's also discounting his avoid, which is also pretty good. I will say I really do like the provoke. It's kind of, I don't want to call it unnecessary because he's an archer, and so just being in range of melee attack makes him irresistible anyway. But provoke, I feel like just super guarantees and makes him super liable for drawing enemy aggro towards him as opposed to towards other units. I don't know if anyone knows the full enemy targeting priority math and how that works. And either Path of Radiance or Radiant Dawn. I know there are some people who say like, oh, provoke is worth such and such or does such and such, but unless we know the whole picture, we can't really like fully integrate it into our knowledge. But overall, I think Shinon, super reliable Jagan, in that he'll always do damage. Maybe he'll do more damage than you wanted, but he also does a great job at drawing the enemy attacks towards him. And I think especially in this early game when you have like kind of a frail Ike and 100 million enemy units, I think that's a great thing to do.
I agree. I do want to... I'm a little afraid of getting overrun by enemies because Shinon doesn't kill the enemies, but I think I'll be able to make use of this in at least some instances, or just like pick off isolated enemies.
Well, the good news is you can only provoke 4 enemies at a time, right?
So, I guess. I mean, you can provoke more and they'll die.
That's true.
If they have hand axes, bows, etc. All right, that's Shinon for you. Let me see if I can get on some other growth on screen. Perhaps this guy's growth would be nice to have.
Good old Gatrie.
Some Gatrie. Also comes with steel and iron of his own variety, but a very different unit indeed. Same availability issues, kind of. He leaves at some point, but for the early game, he's very good to have around. Mostly because the bulk is massive. Like we said, Titania and Shinon are bulky, but I think Gatrie gives him a run for their money with 14 defense on top of this similar HP. So a lot of enemies do 0 damage to him. I recall there's like 2 specific instances of armor slaying enemies in the early game, like an armor slayer Myrmidon and I think a fighter with a hammer. And you can tell these guys have armor slaying effective weapons, not because you check their stats, that would be cheating. You can tell because they do damage to Gatrie, whereas everything else does not. Everything else
you
is
have
just
one
kind of
fewer
bounces off
armor
him. Yeah.
You're like, what the heck happened here? No, but Kieran.
And it's like, just like you'll fight like a group of 3 enemies, and one of them has an armor effective weapon, and one of them does a bit of damage, everything else does no damage, and it basically this result is the same. Gatrie's alive at the end, so who cares? Double effectiveness and high defense just kind of gets him through the battle. Of course, the drawback of that is his speed is kind of low. I think he still doubles some enemies in the early game just because their weapons are weighing them down as well. So Gatrie still doubles. He's not even weak. He's weighed down by 1 by the steel lance, so he can usually double with iron. And then if he doubles, the enemy's dead because his strength is so good. And then he kind of pays for it with bat mobility, which is unfortunate. But in the early game, it doesn't really hinder him all that much. It's only later on when you really have more units with high durability, but also meta mobility. So that usually tends to kind of get him outclassed. But when you do have him in the early game, he's going to be very nice to have. What do you think?
Yeah, so I think I'm noticing a theme between Shinon and Gatrie here is where, of course, obviously they both come back a bit later, but for the early game especially, it's like these guys seem really strong. And that's usually most of the time I leverage them. I think by the time they come back, I already have other units I'm attached to. Less so than Gatrie and Shinon. But yeah, you're absolutely right, that especially in this other game, he's super duper one-rounding with the Steel Lance. And even the Iron Lance could just be used for accurate chip, probably even more so than Shinon can. Just because he's still going to double with it and he's still going to hit with it. Weapons in Tellius tend to be pretty accurate, if I recall.
Yeah,
so
they do look accurate to me. You remember him not killing things with the iron? I thought he killed with iron as well. Maybe not these pirates. They're kind of bulky. Oh, calm down, game. Hello.
Oh.
Gatrie just killed my game, guys. What the hell?
Nintendo GameCube.
My GameCube. No! My GameCube is on fire. Be right back. Because, I guess we should take a look at Soren and the reasons why I'm making all these shoves to keep him safe, because that's what he is.
Yeah.
It's because of these stats. It's because of the way he is built. He is built differently from Gatrie. He's the most different unit from Gatrie that you can possibly imagine. Because, I mean, I guess mobility-wise he's the same, but when it comes to strength and defense and HP, he's got a lot less of those. He's a little faster, a little more magically adept. Later on, he grows into like a really fast, really powerful sage that just two-shots everything with one to range and can use stats, which is very good. But to get there, you have to get through Soren's very rough early game, where he has no durability to speak of. He doesn't get O-code by enemies, quite like in some other more difficult games, but he dies in 2 hits to pretty much anything. I don't think there's much that doubles him, but he does get weighed down by wind by 1 point right now, and if you get lucky, he grows strength somewhere with the 5% of his. It won't get weighed down anymore, but usually he gets weighed down a little bit by Tome, so his speed start isn't the best. It's not like Void where it grows out of it. It takes a while. But once his speed catches on, his magic catches on, and you can maybe give him Vantage to complement his adaptability, his Avoid tank becomes reliable. He has an Ike support between his Thunder affinity, or between Soren's Dark affinity and Ike's Earth affinity. They get a lot of Avoid. So in that way, Soren becomes more reliable, and at some points can probably survive enemy phases. But right now, Soren is a liability, and I am very afraid to train Soren in this, because I find his damage output is pretty unpredictable. I can just remember that he has 8 attack, I guess, and I just kind of have to guess how much res an enemy has, and then hopefully I can feed him kills, but I have to pay very close attention to like how much I weaken an enemy, because normally it's like, okay, I hit a guy with Gatrie, he's going to take like maybe all but 6 damage from his HP, but if I don't remember exactly how much it is, there's a chance Soren won't get the kill, and feeding kills to further units I think will be much harder in this playthrough than the other. I think training Soren will be very hard. I might make a bit of an attempt, but I used him last playthrough, so I'm not sure if I'm going to do that. Maybe I'll try Illyana instead, who's a mage who joins later. But Soren seems very tough to train in this. What do you think?
I would definitely agree. There are times when I'm like, there are times when I'm playing hard mode or playing maniac mode, I'm like, all right, Soren's got this, and I go and the forecast is like 3 damage. I'm like, crap.
Yeah.
like never mind, this doesn't work. So and then you just adapt them anyway. No, yeah. I'm kidding. But I do definitely think his training is just a really awkward part. Partially because wind is not the most amazing tome. Like the tomes in Tellius first off are they're I would say they're kind of hit and miss, but wind is like really just all hit, and not in that way.
God damn it.
But they definitely all have low might. Even the best one in this game, Thunder, still has pretty low might, if I recall.
Yeah.
Furthermore, it's actually quite a while until you get another one, and so there's a limit to how much you can train Soren in the early game. Because I find that if you really go hard with it, this wind tome will actually just break.
Yes.
But you're gonna run out, and it's a long time until the next one. So, you can't go too crazy training Soren, is what I'm trying to say. You're actually just gonna run out of wind tome. Probably about 2/3 of the uses are gonna be spent just like failing to kill them, or the first attack you do because the second one doubles and kills them. Like you're actually gonna run out of you're gonna run out of gas pretty quick on Soren. I haven't spoken about his late game, and his late game is like actually pretty good. I find mages to be just actually quite nice in Path of Radiance. That's ignoring the JP like crit underflow glitch. Like just in general, mages in Path of Radiance tend to have good attack with siege tomes. They tend to just have good attack in general. Like most enemies have pretty low res. This isn't Radiant Dawn yet. So overall, I really like Soren. I just think that, again, if you can get past this kind of awkward early training phase where you're just really limited on what you can do and how much damage you can do, I actually find, if anything, it's more important to get lucky magic level ups than it is to get lucky strength or speed level ups, because that actually like lets you go further and do more with Soren. Like doubling, I think, actually just exacerbates his problems in the early game.
Yeah, and enemies are quite bulky, so the extra might that Soren brings to the table is actually quite big in some instances. Like enemy tigers in the late game, for example, is very bulky. Enemy generals as well. Especially because effective weapons in this game are either limited or just not around at all sometimes, and they have double might when they do. So yeah, there's definitely uses for Soren late game as well. And I agree with the siege stones because all the siege stones are C rank, and I think Soren gets up. I think he gets some rank bonuses, or you can get him there fairly easily. I remember him getting to meteor rank or bolting rank, one of the two, with just a little bit of focus, and those can be very helpful as well. So yeah, definitely high utility once he gets there. But the rocky start, it's gonna make training tough. But maybe I'll be able to get it done. Here's Mia's stats now without a crashing game sound, and they don't look super bad right now. I actually think Mia's okay for some parts of the early game. But I think she's definitely the worst unit that we've recruited so far, because the game just isn't kind to her in any of the ways that a game can be kind to a unit in Path of Radiance. She's got low strength, high speed, locks to swords, never gets a mount, never gets access to lances or axes or even bows or magic. So she's just a fast Myrmidon-like unit. So just like with Lyn, if she wasn't the Binding Blade, she'd be much better. She'd still suffer from not being effective against like enemy cavalry at least, unlike Lyn, but there'd be some more of a niche to her. In this game, there isn't really much you can do with a fast sword unit that can't be done with anyone else. The fact that like all the knight units, like all the paladins, are also super fast isn't helping there either. So it's kind of hard to find a way to use Mia properly. If I use Mia, I have an extra handicap. I'm not familiar with her, so if I attack an enemy, I have no idea how much damage she's going to do. It could be anywhere between 0 and 5, I think, for all that matters. So I'm very scared of what that will do. I'll try to use her when I can, which will be your first couple chapters, but at some point it's going to be too many better units to really justify deploying her. If a lot of good units die, then yeah, I might use her and she'll be interesting to use. But generally, I don't find Mia very enjoyable to use. She just kind of lengthens the game for me, which I don't find very fun. But you know, some people like Mia, but I prefer to wait until, you know, Ready Dawn starts to start using Mia personally. What about you?
That's right. Yeah, I mean, Mia's a fan favorite and all that, and I actually really do enjoy using her as well. I think that, you know, her primary downside of low strength is pretty easy to overcome in Tellius, because you can just make a +5 strength forge, and you know, now you're actually doing damage. Even if you weren't doing much before, now you're definitely in business. There is a bit of a downside to that, where if you forge a sword for Mia, then you weren't forging a hand axe or a javelin for someone else. Although forging a one-range weapon from time to time is still pretty good. I definitely think that I agree with your assessment that her high speed as a niche is somewhat crowded, because it's pretty easy for your units in Tellius to just get enough speed to double. Even some of the slower units like mages or armor knights, at least in this game, it's very easy for your units to double. So I don't exactly find it particularly impressive. We haven't spoken yet about Vantage, which is like a cool skill. It makes it a little light when it procs, but with me, it very rarely changes the actual like math or arithmetic of a combat. Maybe in Swordmaster with a High Might Forge, this could occasionally let her one-shot an enemy at one range without taking the attack, but for the most part, I'm not too impressed with this skill on her. So
yeah, I forgot about it too, because it really doesn't matter very often, does it? It's like, if you're FE9 and you leave an enemy with 3 HP for an enemy phase, they're not going to attack me yet, they're going to run away and heal. That's what they do.
Yeah, no. So, I mean, like, maybe there are some situations where it could come up. I know there's a Vantage scroll later that we could maybe end up giving to somebody, but
yeah, or the Wrath scroll.
In the case of Mia. Oh, true.
Give that to me as to start critting everything at one range if you're a little bit lucky. You just have to be at low HP for Wrath to work. But Vantage works always in this game, which is pretty cool.
Always. Every time.
Always.
No matter what.
All this time? Always. And
all
then
this time.
There was like one other thing I wanted to say about her. Oh, right. Just like we said before, strength is constitution in this game. So how much strength you have determines how much weight you can handle, the Last Promised style. And the funny thing is, like, she joins with an Iron Sword and a Slim Sword, but she's strong enough to wield the Iron Sword without losing attack speed. So Slim Sword, I'm not sure why it's there. But you'll notice it when you're starting using the Steel Blade or an Iron Blade or a Steel Sword. Those will weigh her down, which cuts into her attack speed further, which is like her one advantage. She'll like stop doubling if you use anything heavier, which is also unfortunate. And her durability is kind of bad too. So all that kind of adds up to a unit I don't personally enjoy using, but you know, it has their funnies every once in a while.
I think it could be kind of like a misuse of that stat to saying like, oh, we're losing the speed. I think if anything, the excess speed just, you know, it gives them the option of attacking with a heavier weapon or attacking with a lighter weapon as the need may be. And I know that I'm probably just like parroting exactly the point you made in Isadora video some time ago.
Yeah, I agree with that. General point is just for me, it doesn't do all that much. It's like, okay, now you, instead of doing 2 times 4, you're doing 1 times 8. It doesn't generally help her in any way. That's what I find anyway. Illyana is a very complex, interesting character, but that's not what we're here for. We're here for unit stats and unit growths. I used Illyana for the first time in my last Iron Man playthrough. I never trained her otherwise, and it was really fun. Someone bribed me into promoting her, not to the traditional level of like a sage with, staves, but to use knives, which made her a very bit different experience from the normal experience. The normal experience with Illyana, as far as I know, is somewhat fragile mage, focuses on thunder magic, has enough speed to double if you put resources into her, and enough attack to 2 with KO. That's generally how I think most people treat Illyana or see Illyana. But I don't know how accurate that is. I think mine got a little bit RNG screwed, but I might be confusing it with Radiant Dawn. But generally, I think she's sufficient in almost every area, but a little bit behind on levels. She's only level 6, and she does get weighed down by Thunder and Elf Thunder a bit. This weighs 3, so she's weighed down by 2 points because her strength is 1, and 3 minus 1 is 2, and then Elf Thunder weighs her down by 5 points. Yeah,
massive 5 points.
Yeah, so. It's pretty hefty. But she has a better strength growth than Soren. She has 25% strength growth, so there's a chance she'll recover it. I think she also might get some from promotion, so that will recover it a bit, but it takes a bit to climb out of that hole. And then, generally speaking, from my tier list review with Typhoon Carter, I know that Soren and Illyana have roughly equivalent starts at this point in the game. And as we said before, Soren has not the greatest start in the first place. He's pretty weak. Ours is kind of worked out eventually, but he's still not great. And this is kind of what you can expect Illyana to be too at base. Like, workable once a range, but you really got to be careful with her. She does have the Shade skill, which causes enemies to attack other enemies units first. It sounds very definitive the way it's worded here, but it's actually not that definitive. It's we don't actually know exactly how much a deep prior does enemies. Like, they might still kill Illyana if you leave her in range. So despite this skill, you gotta be very careful with her. But the reward is a pretty funny mage that can use like both short and long range magic eventually, and use stabs or funny knives. Both are fun, but I don't have too much experience with her. What about you?
So I will say this is another unit that I'll Lampshade crit Forge Thunder and whatnot, because that's one thing, again, we're not doing. I think we mentioned that with Soren. If you're playing Manding mode or a JP version of the ROM, that's like the most OP thing in the game, is a crit Forge Thunder. We're not doing that here, so that'll kind of substantially decrease your utility. I totally agree with like pretty much every other mage. She's very awkward in the early game. You can see these sets are not really that good. Like, Soren's kind of struggling to perform, and I think this Illyana is like strictly worse than Soren in all categories right now.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of the reason, I will admit, I kind of fell into the trap of like, oh, this mage is so good, but I think it's more that the Thunder Tomes that are on her were good. Because these Thunder Tomes, like, Elf Thunder is like 6 might, I think. 6 or 7 might. Yeah, it's huge. And then Thunder is 4, I want to say. Yeah, it's honestly just these tomes that are pretty good. So I personally think, like, right now, the optimal decision would just be to take these tomes and trade them onto Soren and call it a day. However, if you want to use Illyana, she's definitely a fun unit. She's got like a bunch of funny support conversations in the game, and even though she has an awkward start, yeah, if you train her up, she's got like absolutely great 1-2 range, and the tomes later are like much better. So pretty much the same story as Soren, to be honest, although no Adept.
Yeah, definitely. I think Adept is definitely much better than what Illyana's got going on. Serviceable. That takes time, and our time is precious because we got 2 units to analyze, and I think I promised that we were going to do Rolf first, so here is Rolf, often considered to be the worst unit in the game, if not the worst. I don't remember if he ended up being the worst on the tier list I did recently, but I think he was around the bottom at the very least, and it's because he's an archer and enemy phase based game with pretty bad stats to boot. I don't know why they give all these characters that are already at a disadvantage also bad stats. In the case of Rolf, it's probably story, gameplay, what's it called?
Integration.
Yeah, let's call it that, sure. I was trying to look for a different word, but integration will do, for sure. Yeah, his stats are just not very good. 5 strength and 6 speed at this point in the game is very low. It'd already be like subpar in chapter 1, and we're in chapter 9, so yikes. Personal weapon, the Rolf bow. I think only Rolf can use it. And Shadow Dragon Wolf, apparently. Really accurate. I think it's about as strong as a steel bow, better than iron. I actually have a very good excuse for not using Rolf, and it's not that he's bad, nor is it that I used him on my last playthrough. It's that if we accidentally get Rolf killed, we don't get Shinon, and we gotta prevent that. We gotta get Shinon back.
Yeah, so, we gotta get Shinon back.
Yeah. So like, I guess if I trained him, then it would be easier to keep him alive later because he'll have actual stats. But at the same time, if you actually use him, there's a higher chance he'll die. So I think in the end, I think this is for Rolf's own good that we bench him.
Do you think in Shinon's re-recruitment chapter you can keep level 1 Rolf safe?
That
I think so. It shouldn't be too bad.
I think so. As long as we remember that like there's long range magic on that map, and then we don't like leave our backlines open. As long as there's enough characters alive to protect him, I think we'll be fine. And that front, we haven't gotten anyone killed yet somehow, so I think we can manage. And if I get him killed, you know, that's my fault, I guess.
There we go. That's the content.
Have you ever used Rolf?
I will say, no. And I mean, you did come out swinging pretty correct. This is a pretty well considered to be the worst unit in the game on pretty much all difficulties. It's not to say, by the way, this isn't to say at all that like you're a terrible person if you use Rolf or you want to use Rolf.
Absolutely not.
It can be fun to do so. It can totally be fun to do so, right? Absolutely fun character, and I mean maybe you just enjoy the challenge of it. Maybe you enjoy his character. I don't know. In any case, like use him if you want. We're not going to. Objectively speaking, it's probably an unwise decision. If I had to find something about Rolf and be like, this is a pretty unique thing, it would be his bond support with Boyd and Oscar. I guess maybe you could contrive a situation where using that could be useful. Like right now he's getting, I think, like plus 10 to crit. So like maybe I could dream up a world where like that's worth it. But I'm really grasping at the straws here, I feel like, in order to find something that
if
he's
I
really
had to
good
find
at.
something, it would be the triangle attack, right, that you get late in the game between...
that's true.
If you give Oscar bows, and then you have like a certain confrontation later on, like a base convo, it will unlock a triangle attack between Rolf, Oscar, and Boyd, but only if they all have a bow. I think if they all have a bow equipped, or they're all using a bow, or they can all use a bow, something like that. That'll let them triangle attack for a guaranteed hit and crit, which is funny. Like, Rolf has a lot of funny things going on. Like, me saying a unit is bad is not necessarily saying I don't even recommend using this unit. I don't recommend using this unit if you're looking for units that are easy to use or like just easy to play if you're new to Fire Emblem. Like, the idea is just like if you're objectively or subjectively tiering units or whatever, this one ends up at the bottom. That's it. I've used Rolf and I've enjoyed using Rolf. It's just he's not very good, but it doesn't matter. You know, he's funny. Deadeye is also very funny in this game. It's a mastery skill you get later on. Once you get promoted units, you have access to mastery skills. And there's one Deadeye that it has like a chance to put your enemies to sleep, which is whatever. But it also unconditionally improves your accuracy by like a lot. I don't remember how much. I think it like doubles your hit or something. It's insane. So you get like insanely accurate attacks with him.
Oh wow. Huh.
Which is, you know, kind of more of a trivia thing than something that's actually useful in gameplay. But there you go. There's many funny things that Rolf can do.
I never knew that. That's funny.
Yeah, one last thing about Rolf that I almost forgot to say. Weapon effectiveness in this game is 2 times, so Rolf does very underwhelming damage even to flying enemies. So because his might only gets doubled instead of tripled, like it would be in like the Binding Blade, for example. So that also kind of hurts him. Okay, enough about...
Next unit.
Yeah, next unit before I get depressed. Nah, just kidding. Rolf is funny. The next unit that we have is Mist. I exist her over here, so let's shift to her stat screen. And I think Mist is much better than Rolf. Even though her stats are arguably worse in a lot of aspects, but healing means you don't really need stats to be good, and healing is generally helpful. Now, fortunately, we managed to keep our other health checker, Rhys, alive, and then these two kind of compete for the same healing, because there's been a couple turns already where we just haven't had anyone to heal, and now we have twice as many healers, so there might not be something for Mist to do. I do think Mist has better reward for being trained as a staff user, but she also starts off a bit worse because her staff rank at base is only E, so you need like 10 or 15 heals to get to D rank, and then from there it keeps on going. So it takes a little bit longer before you get to the useful staffs. But on the plus side, Mist promotes and gets a mount. She becomes a Valkyrie, so she'll have more utility that way. And she's also in one battle that Rhys cannot be deployed in later on, the battle against the Spoiler Man. So it's worth training Mist for that alone. If you think that fight is worth fighting, you don't have to fight it, so it's not necessary. But the game feels a little bit incomplete if you don't. So that's a good argument for training Mist, at least for like most people playing the game casually. So in that sense, I'm kind of tempted to train Mist, but I'm also already invested in using Rhys and kind of having them go the whole way through. Maybe one of them will die and have to switch to the other. That's the kind of the way I view them for this playthrough. don't remember if I've ever used Mist full time, but I think she's all right. I think Mist is fine. If you put a lot of work into it, she can actually like really help out with staff utility, but it takes a while. She's like an S healer, I guess you could think of her. But I think she's really nice. What do you think?
I think so as well. I've heard rumors that this unit's like really good on Maniac mode, and I can't really confirm it because I've not played Maniac mode like all the way to the point where this unit, usually for Valkyrie utility type stuff like Valkyrie, Sonic Sword. I can't really remember all the details. But I've heard rumors that in Maniac mode this unit's actually like really good for those kinds of utility things or for mounted healing. Apparently just having heal stabs in general is good on that difficulty. Like even like you want Mist in addition to Rhys. So, and I think that's like that is one good thing to do. Like you don't have to use this as the substitute for Rhys. Maybe you play like just a really, aggressive play style where everyone's getting injured all the time and I need to cure with Mist or something. I've never used her full time as well, but I think in this playthrough, she could in fact be pretty useful. So I mean, like, why not try?
Yeah, I mean, this chapter
we're
going to
use her in this map.
Yeah, this chapter we're going to be split into 2 teams, so we might as well put one healer in each, right? That should probably be helpful. And then
I think so.
Yeah, this is Marcia. I think Marcia is the best unit in the game by default. Titania is really good right now, but Marcia, once trained, is so much better later on as a flyer with super viable combat that I think she surpasses Titania. I feel like Marcia, when I used her the last time I played on hard mode, it felt like I had like a strength +4 now running around, which if you've ever had that, it's the most godly feeling in the world. She was super powerful, and I was playing on fixed growth, so she wasn't just like RNG blessed. She's just killing everything with forges, and oftentimes even without forges, and she flies, but that's future talk. Right now, her bases are like not that great, so she does need resources like stat boosters and bonus experience to get there. But if you're focusing all your resources into one unit, she's the best one in the game, and we all know focusing your resources into one unit is a pretty good way to play, or an efficient way to play, I should say. And Marcia does that the best out of anyone, so she is super good. But I won't deny her start is pretty poor if you don't do those things. So if you play units on a more equal level, she won't stand out as much. Which, I mean, I already dumped my resources into Void, like I gave him a bunch of Bex, so she probably won't reach the amount that last Marcia reached, but she's still like super useful just for flying alone. Great utility unit, even if not raised to like an unfair level.
Yeah, no.
She's fun to use, regardless, as long as her strength doesn't get screwed horribly. And I'm playing on random mode, so that could happen. I don't know if I'm going to use her or not. I'm definitely going to use at least one flyer, and one that joins before Tanith joins. So like either Marcia or Jill will probably be used. I haven't decided yet. I like both. What do you think, Raisins?
I definitely think so. I mean, your assessment of this is probably the strongest unit in the game. I think the only contest to that would maybe be Titania, and at that point it's like, okay, clearly I see you value your early game, high availability Jagan more. Like that's not even a diss to Marcia. It's just if you like Titania more, that's like a you thing. This just speaks to your values. I definitely agree that her start is a little bit weird. The best way to fix it is probably to get the Slim Lance the heck out of her inventory and get her a Forge Lance. Once you do that, actually, she's probably just as good as another one of your units, if not better. Maybe the only weird thing is like 20 HP, but even then she has like 8 defense. Like that's not even that bad of a... That's not even really terrible bulk to start. And yeah, as you mentioned, if you want to play this game on like super duper easy mode, just save up all your bonus experience for this map and then give it all to Marcia and like just go burr. Like this is definitely a unit to just invest all your resources into if you wish to.
Sure.
It's difficult for me to really say that much more about Marcia, because that really is the story of the unit. Just like you give this unit all of your bonus experience, all of your resources, and she just slaughters the entire game.
For sure. So. I think the last thing to say about Marcia is that she's a great candidate for a pink force weapon.
Oh, true.
That would be the one thing I would add to this analysis that I just realized, because she has pink hair. You gotta feed. Okay, I managed to get Volke out here without BM later crashing this time. So Volke is a thief, and as you can see, he doesn't have any lockpicks because he can just pick locks without any of those. So that's convenient. And in this game, there are some treasure chests that you cannot get without a thief. You get a couple chest keys, and that's about it. So a lot of the items that Volke gets, he gets full credit for it until you get another thief. And he's also the best of the thieves combat-wise, so that's all going for him. That's pretty good. His stats are actually like really nice looking at first glance, like 12 strength, 13 speed for a level 10 unit at this point in the game. It's not like amazing, but it's pretty good. But then he uses knives, which are some of the worst weapons you've ever seen. He can't use anything else, so he's kind of stuck with this 2 might weapon for a long while. You do unlock other, no pun intended, you do unlock other knives later on in the game, but they're also pretty low might. I think their strongest might be like 5 or 6 might or something. It's pretty bad. Although they're fun to use because they're so bad. Like if you kill an enemy, you feel like extra accomplished. But beyond that entertainment value, they're really, really bad. At least they're accurate, I guess. He also has a story-based promotion later on, so you can't promote him as soon as you want to. So keep that in mind if you're trying to use him. You can't just throw a Master Seal and promote him, I believe. And other than that, the treasure in this game is quite good, like overall, but a lot of it you can get through chest keys. So he gets like, assuming you get like 4 chest keys, right? I give full credit for the 5th and onwards best treasure, basically, because the first 4 you would get with chest keys. So he gets some good treasure, but not the best treasure exclusively. I generally just deploy him whenever I see treasure chests. I think most people just don't bother with chest keys at all. They just deploy thieves whenever they see treasure chests on the map, which is a fine approach if you're not worried about playing fast, which I am not. And yeah, he's pretty sufficient for a thief because you don't really need anything to be a thief. He's also good in the desert map, which will come up later. He has unrestricted movement there, and he picks up items, I think guaranteed. So yeah, not too much to complain about Volke. As long as you don't use him for combat, he's pretty good as he is utility. Anything to add?
Yeah, I absolutely I just absolutely love this unit. I do think you're right with the knives being the biggest downside. Although I think, like in the hands of Volke, the knives aren't like really that terrible. I mean, 14 attack is like basically what Soren was having against people, right? Mm-hmm. So, well, now that I put it like that, they actually do seem really bad.
Yeah, because like Soren was doing like bad damage early on, and then he also hits res, whereas Volke hits on defense. That feels worse to me, like significantly. That's true. So.
Yeah, it's also, you know, the other knife wielding class doesn't really use them that well either, to be honest. So yeah. I think that kind of sours the perception of knives for a lot of people. There is like a small asterisk with Volke, and that is he charges you 50 gold for every lock that you pick.
Oh yeah, true.
And it's charged to your account at the end of the chapter, I think. Although if you have not enough gold in your inventory at the time, he just like has a funny dialogue and refuses to do it. It's very rare to see because 50 gold is like such a small cost, but it does exist. So he's a very funny unit. I think there's one other thief in the game, and you'll probably be bringing one of them to any map with chests and whatnot. Generally speaking, I think it's Volke if you want a unit who doesn't just like die as easily, and the other unit you get later if for some reason you're like really cheap and don't want to pay 50 gold. So
yeah, I think if you're confident that that the unit's not going to see combat, you can bring the other one just fine. But it's so much safer feeling like Volke is on the field than the other one, Soth, because Soth has worse bases and joins later. So it's nice to have someone who's not Soth. Okay, well let's jump to the next one. Let's see if this will crash anything. Let's explain some cat girl lore, shall we?
Some cat girl lore.
Girl lore. Get the growths on here. So Lethe is, like I said, cat girl, and you kind of saw how she worked last chapter when she was an NPC, a yellow unit. She transforms instantly when this chapter starts, which is unique to her. There are other Lagoos in the game, other transformers, other shifters. But Lethe is one of the 2, I believe, that transforms instantly at the start of the chapter. And as the chapter goes along, she has a gauge that depletes whenever she takes actions or whenever a turn passes. And when it depletes completely, she will untransform, which you also saw happen. And then it takes a while for it to get back up, etc., etc. You can also instantly transform her through use of, for example, the Demi Band, which we'll get later, which comes with certain downsides, or the Lagoo Stone, which is a rare item that you transform that Mordecai comes with. Those are options to like kind of bypass the issue, but generally, Lagoo's gauge is kind of annoying, but Lethe has the best gauge in the game probably because this is being transformed instantly is the best. You just instantly get to attack, and for the first I think 4 or 5 turns, she will be transformed depending on how much combat she sees. And then when she's untransformed, the map is probably in the bag or at least under control to the point where you don't need her to be transformed. So it's pretty convenient in that regard. So I like Lethe a lot. The bureaucrat that she comes with is a bit weird. It says that it halves damage done by Bjork attacks for use by Lagoos only, which seems to imply that like any normal enemy just deals half damage against her. But this is a mistranslation. It actually only does that to weapons that are effective against Lagoos, like Beast Slayers and stuff like that. The game doesn't tell you that, but that is how it is. I believe it's a localization error. I don't think it was in the Japanese version, but don't quote me on that. So keep that in mind if you're using Lethe. She does not have damage from everything. Still a nice item to have around, of course, but The Demi Band later on is usually better equipable for Laguz, I find. Statistically, Lethe is pretty fast at 15 speed and has good strength. Like, I think her stats are like comparable to Titania, if not outright better. But she's a little bit limited in weaponry because she only uses her claws as weapons. These don't ever get better, unlike in Radiant Dawn. They're only 8 might 90 hit, which is good for now. It's like on par with a steel weapon. It's very accurate, but it's only one range. And of course, when she's untransformed, I forgot to mention that, it doesn't work. She can't attack when untransformed, and her stats get worse. So you have to be very careful to use Lethe only when she's transformed, unless you're really sure that it's okay for an enemy to just go unpunished and attack Lethe a couple times. But yeah, Lethe kind of plays a little bit like Titania with more limited weaponry early on, and then as the game goes along, she doesn't improve as fast because Laguz's XP gain is kind of so she kind of falls off, but she stays useful for, I would say, the first half of the game or so, if not more, and is usually one of the better deploys by default, just because she doesn't need training to be really good. So that's my rough summary of Lethe. Anything to add?
You mentioned her growth being kind of bad, although if I recall...
No, her XP gain. Excuse me. If I said growth, I meant XP gain.
Is it not equal to just a promoted Bjork unit, or is it a bit worse, or what? I actually can't remember.
I mean, we'll probably find out in this chapter. I just remember her growing kind of slow. But even if she goes to like as fast as Titania, it's still not as fast. I know in Radiant Dawn it's a lot worse for Laguz's XP gain.
Yeah, we'll see. I have the math open now, but I think I can't really like analyze it that quickly. Maybe by the time we're done with Mordecai. No. I do think definitely the Laguz units. I mean, obviously the idea here is that they have incredibly high stats for a very short span of time, and just use them during the time where they have the gauge. I understand that the gauge is like one of the less popular mechanics of Tellius, the Laguz gauge. I know a lot of people just like really hate it. Oh, they can't use the units during that time. I personally kind of find it kind of fun to play around it. Just take this super powered unit and like quick use them while you can, and put Lethe in as many combats as possible. It's kind of fun to me, I think. And as you can see here, the stats are just rather massive for the combat here, and I think in maps where there are a lot of one-range enemies, just deploy Laguz, have fun with them. I don't know, I really like the Laguz units. Lethe and Mordecai are probably the two, I don't want to say the worst Laguz units in the game, because you could talk about availability and whatnot, and there's also maybe like a couple others that you could point to, but the other Laguz units you get in the game are also like really good too. Like, calling them the worst Laguz units in the game, I don't think is slander against them. It just means that the other units are also really good.
Yeah, I think she's...
So I'm looking forward to getting the rest of them. Yeah,
I reckon I think she's generally better than a lot of them. Honestly, like at least better than Ulki for sure. Because Ulki's kind of doo-doo in this game. But also, I forgot to mention this.
Maybe misremembering.
Her growths are obviously, like, if you see them at the side of the screen, they're amazing. Reysons can't see them, so I don't fault them for not mentioning it. But she has 130% HP growth, for instance, and 50% strength, 70% speed. It's quite insane. She just doesn't level up much, like I said, so they don't matter that much. But her level ups are very satisfying at the very least.
Oh yeah.
So there's that. Let's switch over to from Cat Lady to Tiger Man. Mordecai over here. We get his growth on screen. Wow, it didn't crash. Amazing. Mordecai is a very different approach to Laguz thing. He starts with 4 gauge only, so he doesn't start transformed. But you could solve this by using the Laguz stone that he has, but this is like one of the 4 uses that you have. I think you get like, maybe you get like a couple more, but they're pretty rare. Maybe if you steal more, you get more, but generally they're pretty rare. But the great thing about Mordecai, when he's not transformed, he can still use his smite skill, which you can see here. It's just shove, but twice, and because Mordecai is so heavy, he's a weight of 33, he can shove basically anyone in the game and move him forward. We haven't used shove too much, although we've considered using it a couple times, and whenever Mordecai's on the field, you should always look out for shove and smite opportunities, because they really can change how you position your units. The double shove that you can use on like anyone is great, so even when Mordecai can't fight, he is still very powerful in a different way. And on top of that, when he does transform eventually, which happens like, I think about roughly 1 turn before Lethe untransforms, so generally if you deploy them both, you always have a Laguz available. And when he's transformed, he's slower, but bulkier and tougher, so he hits harder. Might not double, although he still doubles a fair bit early on, and then it kind of falls off from there. So he's like a tank, he's like an armor knight kind of, but as a tiger instead, which is a different approach and one that works most of the time. I wouldn't recommend using him for combat full time, but the smite utility alone makes him worth deploying in all sorts of playthroughs if you know what to do with it. It's great if you're planning it out. If you're not planning it out, it sometimes doesn't really do anything. But the options you can get with it potentially are really amazing. What do you think?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think he's a great candidate for the Demi Band too, for that reason as well. Because when you Demi Band him, you get to transform him on turn 1, and then use that build immediately to shove even some larger units. I think he can shove some mounted and flying units too.
Yeah. I think you can do that even on
as long as
transform
he's
sometimes, but I forget the math exactly. I talked about this with Tyler on my FE9 Tears review a while ago. I think he actually said like Mordecai can do it so well, even on transform, but you don't need to give him the Demi Band to do it. But you know,
really?
If he does need it, obviously you can give it to him.
Wow. Okay, I take it back. So I don't really know the build math. I know we saw 18 build in a prior window. And by the way, for people kind of like scratching their heads and wondering how exactly the transformation works, in this game, when you transform, it's just a flat boost to your stats. It's like somewhere between +2 and +4 to all stats, essentially, when you transform. So for those wondering, it's not like Radiant Dawn transformation where your stats literally double.
Yeah, no, we don't get 30 strength.
Yeah, no, we don't get 30 strength, yeah. No. It's just going to be a flat boost to your stats, and you usually around +2 to +4.
Yeah. All right. Kieran, the last time we'll take a look at Kieran's stat screen. I think Kieran is very, very good. One of my favorite units to use because, well, my Oscar is very blessed, but normally Oscar's not that strong, and Kieran kind of patches up all his problems. He has a better weapon type in Axis because they have more might. He also has more strength, but he still has enough other things to be good. Like, he's still very bulky, and he still has a lot of strength. I believe if you like early promote Kieran, he has base stats roughly matching Titania, so that's like a good sign for him. His stats are pretty good for this point in the game, and it's honestly one of the easiest units to use that joins like a mid game. He doesn't really need any training. The training is just kind of just using him like you would any unit. He's above average when he joins. He just becomes really, really strong. One of the few units who like 2-hit KOs enemies late in the game without any kind of absurd like forges or effective weapon units. He just kind of does it a lot of the time, which I find very convenient. And then you can also pick a second weapon type for him when he promotes to Paladin. Generally the best one is either Lances for Javelin access or a bow for accurate range, whatever you prefer. It's kind of fun. As great as he has all the pros that all the Paladins we've been using already have, so there's not much to add to that. But he's very, very strong. Like, I think he's as normal as he is as a unit compared to everyone else. There's no way to explain how good he is besides just showing it off. I'm definitely going to use him, at least for this chapter, and maybe some more chapters. He's very fun. I guess the one thing there's more to say about it is he has Gamble, which is an awful skill and practicality, but for comedy value it's very good, because like it says on the tin, it has his chance to hit, so like actually halves it. He goes from, see, his 120 hit, he goes to 60 base hit, and then enemy avoid is reduced, I think. Right? And then,
I don't know if it's accuracy. Like, if it has your accuracy before, like, factoring in enemy dodge or not. The wiki is unclear on the matter.
I'm pretty sure that was how it worked. Maybe I'm spreading misinformation, but either way, it tanks his accuracy to double his crit, which is usually not a very good crit rate anyway. The expected damage of a gamble hit is usually lower than a normal attack, so this is a very bad hit. I can't really show it off because that would be against the spirit of this playthrough, but for comedy value, that is something you can, in theory, do, but it's not very good. But everything else about Kieran is so good that I'm willing to forgive him for having a bad initial skill. What about you?
Yeah, I definitely think so too. Like, obviously, if I were playing the game like all straight-faced, serious, no memes, I just remove Gamble straight away, right? Which you can always do if you don't like that skill. Something tells me we're going to keep it on him for a little bit here. Just call it a hunch. I think we are. But yeah, I think Kieran's definitely the kind of unit where, like, no matter what your playstyle is, he can definitely fit into it. I mean, he's another growth student in Tellius, in case you want another one of those level 21. Look at that, he's level 12, so you can Master Seal him with the Master Seal you got last chapter straight away if you want. His base stats are pretty good. I hear his growths aren't too shabby. Like, literally everything about him is like... literally everything about him is just good.
Yeah.
So, the only thing that, like, holds him back from being an amazing unit in the greater context of the game probably would be availability. Like, I think that was the only thing that would make someone, like, making a giant tier list. That's the only reservation they would have about putting Kieran, like, really, really high. It's like, oh, but he's not around for some parts of the early game. Get over it. Like, he's here now, so go ahead and use him, right?
Yeah.
But definitely looking forward to seeing Kieran's performance here.
Yeah, his growths are great. He has 50% strength and 40% speed, and we get the Night Ward in, I think, a couple chapters from now, which will increase his speed growth to 70% when he has it equipped. And it will also give him +2 defense and res whenever he has to have it during battle. And that will also make him bulkier. And yeah, Kieran is very, very good. I think the flyers are better if you give him a bunch of resources, but if you don't, then there's like a reasonable argument either way for like a casual playstyle. But you know, that's neither here nor there. We have 2 more units.
I will say,
yeah, go ahead.
Both wikis are still pretty unclear about like what exactly it halves and what exactly it doubles. What you said before, where it halves your stats before enemy stuff, that's definitely like how it works in Radiant Dawn. So like if you have 140 hit and your enemy has like say 20 avoid, it would have it down to 70, and then the enemy avoid would bring it down to 50. So.
All right. Well, like I said, I can never show it because I don't know what a battle forecast is, but maybe we'll find out through doing tallies while we're using.
That's right.
Let's look at Nephenee next, right? So Nephenee's here. Let me get her thing here. Nephenee is someone I haven't really used long term. As fun as I think she is, I've only really sort of used in other people's playthroughs, and that fun mostly comes from her skill, which is Wrath. Whenever she's below half HP, she increases her crit by, I believe, 50%, which is pretty big. The trouble, of course, is that when you're at half HP, base Nephenee would be at 11 HP, which is a very dangerous amount for someone who doesn't have insane amounts of defense. 9 is okay, but it's not great. It's not fantastic enough to be at half HP all the time. The way I know Nephenee to be like super optimal, I think if you wanted her to be a killing machine, is you combine it with Vantage, which you get a little bit later. You would give her both Vantage and Wrath. Vantage makes you attack first, Wrath makes you crit almost all the time. Keyword is almost. If you don't crit, you're probably dead, or at least you're gonna be on lower HP. So it's a very dangerous strategy, but when it works, it's really satisfying because you're just killing enemies before they can ever touch you. If you ever played 3 houses, you're probably familiar with some kind of Wrath Vantage strategy, and Nephenee could pull that off. Assuming you're lucky enough and assuming you're able to build her up. Her start is kind of poor. I think if you want to use Nephenee, the best thing you got to do is, just like with Marcia, forge an Iron Lance with max might and probably even max hit to make her power more strong, because this Iron Lance is not going to cut it for her. It only does like 15 base damage minus enemy defense. It's not going to be a whole lot. I don't know what battle forecasts are, so I've never seen it, but it takes some get going. But you can also profit from the Night Ward that we get in a couple chapters. You get insane speed growth. The speed growth will go up to 85%, which is super good. And then as long as her strength cooperates a bit with that 40% growth and 8 base strength, it'll work all right. She's under-leveled. She's a foot unit. Those are all limitations. But in the end, Nephenee's perfectly usable if you want to use her. She's not going to be near the top of any tier lists, but she's kind of fun to use. She's like the first playable soldier in the series. We got to give her some credit for that too. Unless you count like Guide and Lucas, which English players usually don't. So there's a lot of novelty value with Nephenee. It's just, it doesn't really convert into like a great unit, but it does convert into like a fun novel unit in a lot of ways. Have you ever used Nephenee?
Yeah, a few times. I know there have been like a couple Soyo drafts we've done where Nephenee was like definitely like carry material. Absolutely, it's like whoever got Nephenee basically won the game, and everyone was like trying to make people not get Nephenee. was basically how that entire format went. I know there are a couple other problems here with her. Doesn't she have like E rank lances?
She does. People always bring that up, but I don't think it's a big deal because the most important weapon for her is the Forged Iron Lance. Like, why do we want to give her a Steel Lance or a Kill Lance? We don't even have a Kill Lance yet.
I guess that's so. And by the time that you like really have given her enough stats where like Vantage Wrath is a sort of viable strategy, because Vantage Wrath is a force multiplier, right? It's not a force adder. It's a force multiplier. You need to be good to begin with in order for it to like make you really strong.
You need to 3-shot your enemy.
Yeah, like you need to be able to do that. So usually by the time that your stats are good enough for that, then you usually have the ability to wield it, or to wield the Killer Lances, to wield other large fort like a Forged Silver or something, anything you really want. I think, is this a chapter where you can forge steels or no?
No, not yet. I looked into it. It's only iron still.
There we go. So yeah, you know what? Screw the haters. E-rank Lances ain't too bad. I think she's pretty good for that. Not too bad. Yeah, no, Wrath is one of like the best skills in the game. It's one of the best 2 or 3 skills in the game. Mekkah probably already knows the other 2. You've already named one of them Vantage, but
yeah, Wrath.
There's another really good skill.
Yeah. There's a
and
lot
they all
of
combo
really
with each other too.
Yeah. You get them. You get like scrolls for them later on that you can apply to any unit. So the fact that Nephenee just has it for free is really cool. Although, like I said, it's pretty tough to use when she's still in her base form. But eventually it'll get good. I think Howard also gets a crit bonus in the English version of Path of Radiance. That also helps with the Vantage Wrath strats. I forgot to mention that.
I think so too, yeah. No, I mean, all around really fun.
Alright, I don't know if I'll be able to utilize her this play. There's a lot of units I already want to use, so she might just be on the sidelines for this. But for this chapter, we're going to deploy her just to show her off. And last one that we have on the menu is Brom. He's over here. Let me get his thing up here. Oh, already did. Nice. Okay. Brom, he was just in a jail cell, so we kind of build him out. But most of my playthroughs, I don't really know why I'm doing it, because I've never really used Brom long term. He's basically Gatrie that joins it at this point in the game. Like, almost anything you can say about Gatrie, you can say about Brom. I think his stats are actually a little worse. I remember Gatrie's strength being a little higher, for instance. But almost everything else applies. In this game, it's not hard to find a unit that can take hits. We've seen Oscar already take like 1 or 0 damage from a lot of enemies, and Oscar is not supposed to be that tanky. Now, Oscar at this point is kind of defenseless, but even Titania, even Kieran, even to an extent Marcia, when she's proper bonus experienced up, they all have not that much trouble taking hits from enemies. So when you have a unit whose only standout point is being bulky, but then he's worse in every other area, especially mobility and attack speed, there's not too much value to be found there. That doesn't mean Brom is hard to use or anything. In fact, he's super easy to use. You just march him to enemy territory. Their weapons will break upon fighting him because his defense is just that good, especially once he's trained. The Night Ward gives him more speed as well, so eventually he'll start doubling, funnily enough. And it will also increase his bulk even further. Even mages probably won't even do that much damage when he has the Night Ward and like a Pure Water. So again, pretty easy to make good. It's just you don't really have much of a motivation to, other than the novelty of using Brom. But, you know, it's Brom. Look at his face. How could you not, you know, want to do that at least once in your life? He seems pretty wholesome and nice. It's just, again, on a tier list he'd be pretty low, but who cares? You're playing the game. You don't need the tier list. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's a fun unit. I will admit there's nothing like aside from his character, which is of course fun. I think there's nothing really like particular about Brom that's really setting him aside from any other unit. Like obviously, right now we kind of have a very defense blessed Oscar, so that's kind of like. That's kind of infringing upon his supposed territory. But I think even then, like at this point in the game, there's no role which Brom performs better than like any of your other units.
No.
Even like really trying to think hard about here is like, is there something you could have a unit do that Brom does better? And I guess like if you're playing 0% growths, maybe there is one, but I can't really think of one to be honest. So like overall a very fun unit. Training up Armor Knights is super cool. I really like Armor Knights and Generals in this game as well. Like, I don't know, they're just fun to use. They have cool animations and whatnot. But aside from that, I gotta admit, like, objectively speaking, Brom is not exactly the best unit. Fun, if you want to use them, absolutely, go ahead. I really enjoy using them when I do. Mm-hmm. But I do have to, like, you know, sometimes put on a straight face, objectively say, there's nothing really outstanding about this unit.
Yeah, I've had to find, like, 2 minuscule things that are good about Brom. One of them would be that he has 17 weight, so he could shove maybe a bit more than someone like Boyd can, for example. The other one would be that he has a water affinity, which gives strength and defense, which are pretty sought after as far as avoid bonuses go. So that's one thing he can do. I don't remember exactly who he supports, but I know he supports, I think obviously he supports Nephenee, so that would be one way to make her better supporter with Brom. Not like anyone would attack a half HP. No one would attack like a full HP Brom if they can attack a half HP Nephenee, so it would probably work out with advantage stats even. So that's probably one way you can play the game. Probably not the way I'm going to play it, but could be funny. So, I mean, you just kind of saw what he does, but just in case you didn't, he has the Killing Edge, as the usual Red Myrmidon archetypes like to do. But he's kind of different, and then instead of like trying to crit one of your units to death, he just recruits himself on either Mordecai or Lethe. And you have access to a unit with 15 speed and 10 strength, which is pretty okay at this point in the game. Just like me, just like Ike, Zihark doesn't have the greatest long-term performance due to his lack of 1-2 range or amounts, but he can still kill things. Mostly close range, of course. Things that are a little bit faster, he's generally doing a bit better against. We went over this with Mia. There's not many enemies that warrant having overkill speed, but it doesn't mean that high speed is a bad thing to have. It also adds to his avoid. And, you know, mobility is still alright. He's not going to fall behind Ike or anything unless you're risk dropping Ike, so if you're just playing casually, it's not that hard to keep up with Zihark and have to do some things. But I do find that if he's on the front lines among like a bunch of units with 1-2 range, he will often draw attention that makes your enemy face a little bit unproductive. Like you'd rather counter those enemies than not counter those enemies. But against 1-range enemies, he's alright, as long as he has attack to kill. He also has Adept, which gives him a skill percent chance, I believe, to attack again, kind of like with a Brave weapon. So that'll be helpful if you want like extra chance to kill, like between Killing Edge and Adept, and if you want to give it to him later, Astra. Even if Zihark doesn't able to kill enemies, he will generally get the job done through some kind of proc. So he has a safety net there, and that kind of makes up for his average strength. And durability-wise, I could use a bit more bulk, but it's usually sufficient as long as you heal him regularly, or he just dodges a lot. I have never used him long-term. How about you, Raisins?
To be honest, I've never used him long-term either, but looking at these stats, I'm like, why didn't I? Like, he seems rather good. Good skill and speed. Straight away is usually what you want out of a Telius unit, because if you have lowest strength, you can always fix that with the Forge. Or like, you can always just give them +5 might with the Forge. And in that sense, imagine just a regular old Fire Emblem unit with like 15 strength, 15 speed. You would say, yeah, this guy's pretty good. That's basically what any Telius unit is. I don't know if he's going to like take Ike's Forge Seal or something. But I think overall, like Sword Masters are fun to use in the late game. Like, they're just fun. They have really high crit rate. They have really cool animations and whatnot. And so I'm wondering why I never really tried this one. He just seems like a Mio with like a slightly less aggravating start. Right? Like, yeah, sure, you don't get to use him for a while, but then he shows up and it's like, it doesn't really matter that you didn't train a sword unit because you just get this guy. I'm wondering why. I'm wondering why I never used him. He seems actually really attractive to me now.
There's a lot of units in this game that like, I want to use this now, but I'm already using like 10 out of 10 others. That's the reason I never use them.
Fair enough. Like, they're always so good. At this point, you've already like grown attached to the team.
Yeah.
Dang.
That's my
overall,
problem.
yeah, seems pretty good. I like him a lot. The Adept is another one of the skills in the game that's just really good. I think, like, just in general, it's kind of hard to like rely on it, but it's the kind of thing where, like, once you get into late game and you're like, you have Sword Mastery, you have Adept. I think Astra attacks like half power in this game, so I don't know if it's really that good.
Yeah, it's not that good, but it's just, you know, something.
Yeah, it's something. Once you get to like enough skills and high enough proc chance, that actually kind of does become reliable to just say like, he'll proc something, right?
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter whether he procs Adept or Crit or something else. It's like he'll proc something that'll make his combat more favorable. So even though you might look at these skills and be like, oh, it's unreliable, you can't count on those procking. Like, after a while, you kind of can. Don't worry about it, guys.
And even if he does fail to kill like every once in a while, usually not. It's usually trivial to like if he fails to kill like 1 out of 5 enemies, it's not that difficult to like lap him up afterwards. Here we go. So Jill, pretty much if you're not using Marcia, you would probably want to train Jill because having one of these at a super high level is so powerful. That's if you want to like trivialize the game completely, which not everyone wants. But if you do, then having a flyer that's really good is really powerful. Marcia is better at being fast and having higher resistance, whereas Jill's strengths come from higher bulk, higher strength. She joins a little bit later, and that technically makes her a bit worse because Marcia is around for longer to contribute for longer, but when they're both around and you've both like fed them a lot, they're both super good. That said, at this point in the game, Jill is pretty slow, has some trouble getting kills on her own, so a nice portion of Bexp will go a long way to make her good. If you don't do that, then she'll probably be alright. I think her bases are still alright. When we had a peek earlier at Kieran's stats, his defense was looking similar, for example. I think her HP is a bit low, and she loses some speed from that Steel Lance, I think. Yeah, so definitely give her like a Force Iron or something to actually get a might boost. And then you're good to go, because Jill, when she gets going, is insanely strong. And also the Goose Guard that she comes with, you can give it to anyone you want, and it actually does what it says on the tin this time. So it actually has damage done by Lagoose attacks. Not just effective weapons against Lagoose or anything like that, like the Bureau Guard. This item is really good, so that alone honestly makes Jill worth recruiting. But Jill is also worth using. She's excellent, like 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 kind of unit. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you've really like covered the main idea here with that. She's essentially Marcia too. And if you're like, I don't feel like using Marcia, but I feel like using Jill, I wouldn't scoff at your idea, nor would I say that your playthrough is like greatly compromised or anything. Like, it's basically going to be the same run, like using a souped up Marcia versus using a souped up Jill. Like, they're both incredibly powerful. They both have great movement and great stats. And again, with FE9 being what it is, you can just backsp anybody up above the curve very quickly. Jill's another great target for that. Probably easily one of the top 3 units in the game. There's probably some debate as to where she shows up in the top 3. But absolutely, use her if you like. If you don't care for Pegasus Knights because like, oh, they have low defense or low strength or whatever, yeah, just go ahead and ditch them and start using Jill. A lot of the problems that she has, things like low strength, low skill, low speed, or low HP as well, those definitely just go away over time. And I think it's going to be kind of the wrong game for this, but she's another unit with whom, if you just dump all your stat boosters on her, she'll end up being like really good as well. Uses them the best.
Yeah, for sure. Is this Soth? I don't know. I think these might be his... he has a 66% luck growth. I just noticed that on the stat screen. I don't know if that's correct, but his growths are pretty good. So I don't think anyone is going to notice the difference even if it's wrong. But yeah, Soth is the other thief that we talked about in Volke's review. And statistically, he is much worse. He's better in one way and one way only, and that is that he doesn't cost gold to unlock chests. Now, as you know, gold comes in a lot of ways. We get a lot of gold. Sometimes we even get gold for completing a mission, so we don't really need gold that much, and for that reason, you could just use Volke instead. But technically, if they never see combat, Soth is the better thief between the two, because he doesn't cost you 50 gold per lock. Sometimes you might want 2 thieves because there's so much treasure and you don't have enough chest keys to get them all, so you just field 2 thieves instead. Sometimes it take a little bit longer, you just use 1 thief instead. Whatever your preference is, you probably will field Soth once to 5 times a playthrough, depending on your playstyle. And for that alone, I think he's not completely irredeemable. The other cool thing with Soth, the gimmick that he has, is that his growth, as I said, is really good. And he also has the Blossom skill, which I believe is basically a 10% growth increase, or it rerolls his level ups, one of the 2 things. I forgot the exact mechanics, but maybe Reyson will correct me. And then the idea is he turns out well after you train him. Of course, training him is a massive pain because he's these awful base stats and 2 might knife to deal with, so doing so is a pain. And the transfer system from Radiant Dawn doesn't really reward you for it anyway, because his bases in Radiant Dawn are so good, and generally a fully leveled Soth will probably be worse than, base Radiant Dawn Soth, or in any way. But again, it's a funny neat little gimmick that they did, and I just wanted to mention it. But yeah, I forgot exactly how Blossom works in this game. I think it's just a reroll, right?
I think it is just a reroll, which is why if any of the growth numbers appear weird, I can't really see what you have on your overlay right now until the video.
No way these are Blossom growths, but it's fine.
Oh, really? They're all like multiples of 5 and whatnot?
Except for luck. Luck is 66. Everything else is a multiple of 5. So I don't think they're correct, but it's fine. They'll know what to do. Maybe I'll even edit it correctly. They have no idea what I'm talking about.
Yeah, there's like a 3-ish paragraph explanation of how Blossom works, also taking into account fixed growth mode. But yeah, I think in this game it's pretty much just you re-roll the level up. So for example, if you have a 60% strength growth, you roll 2 RNs, and only one of them has to be below 60 in order to get the strength up, basically. Like you only need one. It's like rolling with advantage if anyone's played D&D. It's the same thing. I do agree that combat-wise, he's pretty lackluster. Like honestly, worse than Rolf. Or worse than all the other units in the game, pretty much when it comes to combat. Like at the very least, Rolf can promote into something. Soth can't. But you know what? You don't really need stats to be a thief. You don't really need stats to have high movement in the desert. You don't really need stats to open chests and doors. So in that regard, I think he has all the tools that he needs in order to do, thiefy jobs. So yeah, absolutely deploy him if there's a bunch of chests and you don't feel like deploying Volke, or you for some reason don't have 50 gold to afford Volke. I guess it could happen. Or you just want 2 thieves. Yeah, by all means deploy Soth. Or if you like Soth, deploy him. Definitely pretty good. I just don't expect anything out of this unit's combat. If you're leveling up for Blossom, I don't really think it's for any real payoff. It's just for the serotonin rush when you see several dings on the level up bar, right? So.
Yes, the dopamine argument. I agree. One more thing I'll mention about Soth before I forget, because I didn't mention in Volke's review, Volke has stealth, so usually enemies will ignore him, whereas Soth doesn't have that skill, so sometimes that can save Volke from getting attacked when you really shouldn't be, or when you can't afford it. Whereas Soth, the only thing between him and death are 20 hit points and 4 defense, so that can be a difference maker in keeping him alive as well. Astrid, one of my favorite units in this game just to use, not because she's the best, but because she's just the most fun. Because of the dopamine thing, where you get a bunch of stats and level ups, and Astrid in particular is very good at getting speed. Her own speed growth is only 50%, but she comes with the Night Ward, that from here on out we're going to be using on all of our knightly units, mostly paladins, to raise their speed growth by 30%. In addition, it also grants her a bit of bulk, which can be nice when she's about to die. And then Astrid gets a bunch of level ups because of this other skill she has called Paragon, where she doubles her XP gain. Pretty good combo, low level with Paragon, and then she's a bow knight, so she can very easily hit and run all around the place, either set up kills for someone else, or, take an easy kill for herself. Of course, as always in an Ignorance playthrough, getting kills on a unit with low offenses is very hard sometimes because you don't know if your unit is about to leave an enemy with low HP or outright kill them like 10 times over. So that can be kind of tricky. I also don't know if I have the Bex required to get Astrid up to par very fast. But I just want you all to know I really enjoy using Astrid normally. I don't know if I'll be able to do it this playthrough. Maybe if a bunch of people die. But generally this is one of my favorite units to use. And she can level up very fast. In this chapter there's some ravens she can shoot down if you manage to weaken them properly. And even if you don't have a raven in range, you can just chip someone else and get like 20 to 30 XP. But if you get a kill, that's like a full level almost. It's super satisfying to do. And Bex works very well on her as well, because it stacks with Paragon. So, super easy to use units for being auto-leveled. And turns into a great class, Paladin, and then you can use axes and do anything you want from there. It's just really fun. Just really fun. I don't know what else to put it, but maybe you have more ways to put it.
Yeah, I think this unit really does arrive at like the perfect time to leverage Paragon. Because I think if she came in too soon, it's like, oh well, all my units are really low level, so what's the difference, right? This one just happens to be really good. But she comes in right now, like we literally just promoted Oscar, right? And now we got a level 1 Bow Knight coming in, and yet we're still like considering like tons of positive reasons to use her just because of the Paragon. So she's really well placed in that regard. And yeah, absolutely a super fun unit to use. And I know I promised at the start, I said like, you know, I wouldn't just say, oh, if you give her all your Bex for, oh, if you give her all your XP. I know I said that like several episodes ago. But this unit is really easy to train. You just like, I mean, come on, you chipped a soldier and we got 32 experience, right? Like, imagine if we like chipped a halberdier or if we got a kill. Or if we chipped a raven or if we got to kill him. Even just a regular unit, it'd just be massive amounts of EXP. She catches up really easily. You can Bex her up just as easily as well. She can reach really high levels very quickly, and it's just super fun. It's just a rush, and not in a bad class either. She can become paladin. She can get axes too, just like Oscar did. Did we give Oscar axes?
Yeah, we did.
And yeah, no, that unit is not too shabby, not too shabby at all. It's just a super fun unit to use, and also like a good unit to use.
Yeah, I do think we reached a point in the game where paladins, mod units in general, are becoming a little less dominant compared to flyers, but my flyers aren't too good right now, so maybe they'll be a bit more dominant than normal. So that's Makalov's growth rates, and I gotta confess, I want to use Makalov kind of, but I'm already using like a million paladins, and as good as they are, I want to, you know, make it a bit more diverse. So I do want to train someone on a level in this playthrough again, because I'm kind of feel like most of my units are just like good right now, and it's always fun when you have someone to feed. And I thought it might be Makalov, but I think that'd be a bit monotonous, and that's probably the reason why a lot of people don't use Makalov, is he's just not very outstanding in any way. Like, he's in the most populated class in the game, the best class in the game arguably besides the flyers, but still there's a lot of competition class wise. But there's nothing wrong with his growth. His bases are pretty cringe though. They were, for this point in the game, 9 strength, 10 speed, 10 defense, and 30 HP. It's not going to die in one round, but it's not going to kill anything in one round either. So he's not a glass cannon. He takes like a couple hits before he dies, but you still have to set up kills for him, so you can't really make use of his okay durability on enemy phase. You don't want to, at least. You'd rather have someone else take on the enemies, and that just means you have to feed him a lot. But if you want to use Makalov, he's perfectly serviceable. Like I said, his growth are insane, especially with the Night Ward, bumping the speed up to 80%. He's one of the few units who can use high-level swords if you're into that. So something like the Brave Sword later on, because Makalov only has sea swords, but it's higher than most people have, besides like Zihark and stuff. I guess Ike exists and Stefan exists, so maybe it's not that niche, but it's something he can do, I guess. And he has Tempest, just like Boyd. I just removed Tempest from Boyd in this chapter, coincidentally enough. I forgot all the way through. And it's just as useless on him as it is on Boyd. It just adds more inconsistency. But at least he's not hurt by the accuracy debuff as much as Boyd is. But yeah, I've never used Makalov for a full playthrough, so I have no funny quips or anecdotes to share. I just think he's funny. I think the last time I played Path of Radiance was my Iron Man run, and I had to kill him because I lost Marcia in Chapter 3, so I just killed him and he got the red gem, because I think he drops it as an enemy. That's my experience with Makalov in a nutshell. What's yours?
Yeah, pretty much the same. I think there were a few times whenever we first met, it was over like Path of Radiance draft or something, and like Makalov was actually kind of good in that format. Nowadays, not so much. People have pretty much figured out that you can just do the speed run with some other units, and the times are faster. But Makalov in general, easily the worst cav in the game, but being the worst cav is like still better than many other units, probably puts you in the top half of units in the game. If you want to use them, if you want another cab, if you want to use the only sword knight in the entire game, yeah, go ahead. You'll probably have a good time. It takes him a minute to get leveled up. Like it does take him a minute to get going. It's not quite like Astrid, where you can just like dump your backspin to Astrid and she just doubles it for you. It does take Makalov a little while to get going for his stats to get up. But you know what? If you enjoy just having a large number of cabs, absolutely go ahead with it. I think using him instead of another cav, probably an objectively incorrect move. Do that if you have fun with that sort of thing. Using him in addition to all the other calves, that could probably be pretty strong.
Yeah, definitely. I think maybe if you're playing like an Iron Man run or something, your Kieran died, I guess you might as well try Makalov. He still gets access after promotion.
Oh, true.
Bonk, Stefan.
Bonk.
Pre-promote Swordmaster with really high strength, skill, speed, and fairly impressive HP. And a really good weapon in the Vey Kadi, excuse me, different Kadi. Sorry, I was thinking of the Binding Blade there. Really good sword, S-rank swords, insane crit bonus. You can see with this weapon alone, he has 63 crit. This guy's really good combat. It's only limited by his attacking range and his movement range, but if enemies are near him, his stats are pretty good. I do think at this point in the game, if you have promoted mounted units, that they will generally outclass him by a bit. Like if I had Stefan and Boyd go head-to-head, or I said mounted units, so I guess Oscar go head-to-head in usefulness, they would win out. But for the amount of effort you have to put into Stefan, this is pretty impressive. This is really, really good. If he doesn't have the fake Kadi, his stats look a little less impressive. I think he misses some 2-shot benchmarks later on if he has like a more generic weapon. But as long as you give him something viable, he will either 2-hit KO the enemy, or he has a good chance to just crit them and kill them. And that's pretty impressive. I've never used him long-term to really have an accurate judgment of him, but generally, I think this is an alright unit. He has Astra, which in this game is 5 consecutive attacks at half damage. I think it's skill percent, which is like, okay, it takes up a lot of his capacity, but he has it for free, so it's still kind of nice. Generally, I don't really bothered about losing 5 weapon uses, like a lot of people are, unless it's a fake Kadi, but for most weapons, I don't really care about it. But it feels a bit unimpressive compared to, say, Luna, which just does it without that drawback, or Ether, which does both Luna and it also heals you. So it's not the best mastery ever, but again, he has it for free, so that's kind of nice, I guess. I don't have a lot of experience with Stefan, but I think for what you put into him, I think he's a fine unit. What do you think?
I think so too. I mean, so as far as the masteries go, because this is actually our first mastery, should probably talk about them, just kind of in general. These aren't Radiant Dawn masteries. Pretty much every Radiant Dawn mastery is like, if this procs, the enemy dies, sometimes a little extra happens, right?
Yeah.
In Path of Radiance, they tend to be
more subdued, right?
Like, yeah, they're about between like a normal hit and a crit worth of damage is what you're going to get out of this mastery procking. And certainly that's what Astrid does. Astrid is basically times 2.5 damage. And that's pretty much all of them. Like even things like Soul are just kind of, it's a regular hit, but you just get health back, which is still nice. So like Astrid's pretty much okay as far as masteries go. Going back to Stefan's stats though, this is like endgame ready, pretty much. Like even like on 0% growths, this guy's a monster. I do know that. Like I've literally seen people just take base level 8 Stefan into the final chapter and be like, as a joke, and then he like actually just pwns everybody. It's like, oh, it's like as far as using him late game or using him long term, there's your answer. It doesn't actually matter what you've done with him. Just pretty much any chapter you deploy him, he's going to be outclassing all the enemies. It almost feels like I'm not really one to talk about like developer intentions of a unit, because in my mind that doesn't really matter to how good they are. But it almost kind of feels like you know how originally Lex's Brave Axe was in like a secret book that you had to buy extra? I feel like this is just something for, if you buy the Prima guide, you get this cheat code unit basically.
Yeah.
So I feel like they wanted to do it. He's insane.
It's like Carla done right?
Mm-hmm.
Agree. All right. I don't
so.
know.
I mean,
don't know
like,
yeah.
Carla done stronger.
Yeah.
So, because I like Carla, but I think she's funny.
Which means I kind of want to train up one of those new units we got, and I decided that the most fun one to use would be Torgod, or aka Tormod, who's a new unit. So how about we talk about him, then we bexp him to see how he ends up doing, and then we'll go to the rest of the preps, go to the map, and then we'll talk about our other new unit, Muarim. That'll be the order for today, I think.
Sounds excellent. Let's do it.
Yes. All right. So let me get the stat screen out here. It has these growth rates. They are pretty okay looking at. They're 45 magic, 45 speed is pretty balanced. Of course, Tormod is on a level at this point in the game. I wouldn't call him an Est if you force me to put an archetype on him because, you know, it's not quite like Est and Nino, but it's still pretty late in the game, and the growths are pretty much on par with the rest of the cast. And his base is not super high for his level. They're okay for his level. The real selling point of Tormod is, of course, the Celerity skill. It adds 2 to his movement, so whereas normally a mage would have 5 and a sage would have 6, Tormod is going to have 7 and 8 respectively. I think I did the math right there this time. And then he also has a heavy focus on fire magic, so you can use Meteor at base. I think that's a 3 to 10 range tome that we get later. And he can also get some other long range tomes if you focus really hard. But I just gave him a bunch of fire magic because that's what he likes to use, so I'm just going to go with that. I've used him before in a playthrough I don't think I've publicized ever, and it was pretty fun. It's nice to have extra move on the stages. The fact that they only have 5 move, whereas most foot units have 6, is kind of annoying at times. But of course, they're kind of fragile. Tellius mages are known to be the best ever. I think in FE9, they're better off than in FE10. In FE9, generally the enemies are more like GBA, where they just have pretty low res, so you can usually hurt them. But I don't know how much, so it'll be pretty tough to feed kills to a unit. When, like, first of all, the unit that I'm attacking with needs to not kill, which is a challenge enough itself, as we've seen a couple episodes ago. And then the second thing is Tormod actually has to finish them off from there, while also staying safe. There's a bunch of extra challenges, but I think that will make it interesting. To that end, I'm going to Bex him a little bit, and then we're going to give him Spirit Dust, if he turns out well enough to keep using. If not, well, we'll just bench that Spirit Dust for someone else, I guess. And that'll be the plan, and I think it'll be fun. I know that running around with a 8-move Sage is pretty fun when it actually works out. You do have to keep him safe still, because he's never going to be like super tanky. He's pretty low HP and defense like most mages do, but at least he can get to reasonably good offense with like doubling and killing in one round. Generally speaking, he can still get screwed, of course, like everyone can. What do you think?
Yeah, we only just came up with this plan to Bex Tormod, right? And we didn't really plan anything before.
No.
If we had planned stuff before, probably what we would have done is saved up an Angelic Robe, because really this bulk, this 20 HP and 4 defense, like I know he's about to get a big heap of Bex. And by a big heap, I mean probably like 2 or 3 levels worth, because we don't actually have that much remaining.
Yeah. Because we just promoted under Sage.
yeah, we just... In hindsight,
yes.
maybe not. In this case, yeah, 20 HP, 4 dex or 4 defense is just kind of sad, if I'm being honest with you. However, we do have the celerity, so moving him around and keeping him out of enemy ranges will be really easy, at the very least. It's just, I think it's going to take a minute for us to get him up there. I think if we had really thought this out ahead, we could have saved up more back spin, more stat boosters, and then we really would have had a machine on our hands.
I mean, we're saving up stat boosters, it's just there for Shinon, not for him.
Oh, true, yeah. Oh, I forgot about that. Never mind. That's the real Est. But yeah, in the meantime, Tormod will have to do, and I think it'll be pretty fun. To be honest, I agree with pretty much everything, whether the combat isn't really the huge selling point. Obviously, if there's any unit whom you can get above the curve, you would want it to be a unit with high move and 1-2 range. Like if you can get any unit above the XP curve, and Tormod actually satisfies both of those criteria, oddly enough. And he has some additional utility there. Like sure, he can't be carrying people or do savior, get Ike close to the objective or whatever, but there's really not so many of those objectives, honestly. So really, I do think if there's a unit whom you just want to pump a bunch of stats into, Torgod's a great choice.
Yeah, I don't think I have the stat boosters it takes to make him good right off the bat, but we can have some fun with him. So let's do it. Let's see if we can make Tormod better, because he's not going to be good yet. I feel that both of our new units, Tormod and Muarim, and we can talk about Muarim now. So this is Muarim. All these little -3s and -1s that you see on the screen are from the Demi Band. That's the item he's holding, which lets the Legus transform basically permanently, but it halves their transformation bonuses. So if you were to transform naturally, which takes longer, you would have better stats. The reason I'm showing him like this is because this is the way that Muarim is going to be for most of the time, is using the Demi Band. He's one of the best candidates, because he doesn't have an instant transformation gauge like Lethe does, who just starts the battle at full gauge. He takes a couple turns to transform just like Mordecai, but his combat stats are really good, so he actually has a purpose on the battlefield, unlike Mordecai. Well, I mean, Mordecai's combat is fine, but Muarim's is quite something else, because as you can see, his strength is massive at basically 20 right now. And his speed is okay at like 17, so he can double a reasonable amount of enemies. He can do a nice chunk of damage, and he's pretty bulky too. 45 HP and 14 defense is not bad. If he gets like fully transformed somehow with like a Laguz Stone, that of course improves it even further. So he's much of a combat Laguz than Mordecai is, and he'll be better long term than someone like Lethe. I benched both Lethe and Mordecai just to make room for these new recruits, and honestly, with Muarim, I'm not regretting it. He's really good. His growths are also insane. Laguz growth, I haven't really emphasized them a whole lot in this playthrough, but he has 145% HP growth, 70% strength, 70% skill, and 55 speed, and 60 defense. The thing is, Laguz do level up slowly, but you just know that when you're leveling up, you're getting a dopamine rush, which is also really fun. Generally, leveling him up actively, not the best idea, because long-term, he still falls off a little bit. His speed is not enough to double everything ever, and he's still limited to this claw weapon that only has 9 might, 1 range, all the usual problems that Laguz have. So, not the best unit to train, generally, but if you like growths, you know, you'll still like Muarim to some extent. And he's also kind of heavy. Usually he's the other best candidate for statue frags, other than, you know, Colossus memes on Boyd. So he can shove more people if you give him to that, because he's not as heavy as Mordecai is, so there's some units that he cannot shove normally, whereas Mordecai could. But he's also a good candidate for a Smite Scroll. He doesn't have any skills naturally, but you get a Smite Scroll later on that lets him duplicate some of Mordecai's utility that way. So, in a way, Demiband Muarim kind of combines the functions of Mordecai and Lethe in that way. And he also just has a good, you know, general overall unit feel and unit utility. So I like him a lot, especially because I haven't raised this unit yet. He just came like this for free. So that's pretty good payoff, you know, no cost. Good bargain. What do you think?
By the way, I do think I do really like Muarim. I think it's a bit erroneous to kind of attribute the Demiband to him, because of course the Demiband could just go on anybody.
Yeah, sure. Just say it's a good candidate.
Oh yeah, absolutely a good candidate. If you would prefer Muarim, or not prefer Muarim, if you prefer Mordecai, then absolutely give it to him. Even something like Demiband on Lethe, so she doesn't run out of gauge, is still pretty nice. All of those things are pretty good. There's some other funny tricks you can do with the Demiband.
Oh yeah.
And some other pitfalls you can try to avoid with the Demiband. For example, if you're in the prep screen and you unequip the Demiband, your gauge just goes to 0. There's no way to get it back up except by equipping the Demiband.
You hear like the transformation sound and everything.
Yeah, where's the...
You can kind of see it through the menus in the middle of the screen.
Or even better, like, even if you're in the base and you like trade the Demiband to Lethe and have her equip it, and then have her unequip it, she'll be 0 gauge at the start of this map.
That's cringe.
Yeah.
I didn't know that one.
So, yeah, obviously be a bit careful trading it around if you want to use it. The Demiband, it's probably pretty popular play in Path of Radiance to just like pick your favorite Laguz and give them the Demiband and just go. I can imagine. This seems to be a rather popular way to play. And yeah, for Muarim, I absolutely agree. He kind of like combines the strength of Mordecai and Lethe if he has the Demiband. And he does so for free, so I actually really like him as a unit. I was a bit ambivalent before, but I think I did like a Laguz only run. It's like, oh, this unit's actually kind of good.
I mean, if you compare it to all the other Laguz you have combat-wise, it's pretty much up there, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Lethe might actually be better at certain... Like, I could pretty realistically see a Lethe that's better than this.
Yeah, I think when I made a tier list a while ago, I'm going to start the map, because otherwise we're going to be here forever. Screw it, we're doing it live. There we go. Rin, very cool. Thanks, Rin.
Thank you.
Said so many times, I'm done with it. I'm not Devdan. People make this mistake a lot, but here we are. Okay, apparently I'm in the game. Fine. Devdan is, I think, one of the least used units in Path of Radiance, because he's that awkward mid-blend between usable and unusable. If someone sees a unit with like really bad bases, they often get a compulsion to train them up and make them really good, especially if they have good growth. Devdan has okay bases, which means he falls in that weird spot where people probably don't really want to use him. His first impression isn't too great either, because it gave him this heavy spear, which weighs 18, so his speed is reduced by 5 for no good reason. I think it's to make him less threatening. It also makes it easier to double him as an enemy, which is kind of funny to me. His performance is not spectacular, but it's fixable. It's not as bad as it looks at base. Like, if you compare this unit right now to my promoted units, like, I don't know, Oscar, or... Honestly, these bases are comparable to Kieran, and my Kieran is not very good. But it's fixable. You can use the Night Ward to instantly get +2 defense and res, and then every time he levels up, he has a 70% or 65% speed growth. So he'll slowly become good. He doesn't promote anymore, but he does have the option to use an Occult Scroll, one of the 2 that we have, to get Luna, which is one of the better masteries when it comes to like adding damage. It's like, I think it's skill percent to negate either half or all, I think it's half enemy defense. So if he's not 2-shotting, then that can make him 2-shot. I think he has a... I don't think he has a crit bonus, actually, for some reason. I thought he was supposed to have... No, it's Radiant Dawn, where Halberdiers have a crit bonus. So he only has 7 crit. That's unfortunate. I kind of wish he had that. But if you wanted to use him, you know, it's going to be a little bit of a pain. I've played this game before where I would, like, solo the game with Devdan, but I would save all the stat boosters for him, so that is not exactly representative, but he was pretty good doing that, so it's not impossible. It's just... You have to like this guy. And for the record, I don't really know what to say exactly about Devdan's character. I really prefer Dunvet because his lines are really funny. And the way that they have I think he's the only person of color in this game, and they make him a slave, which is like, So I generally try to stay clear of Devdan for representation. But I do like Dunvet a lot, who's not the same person. But yeah, he's a funny meme unit, but not the best one in the game. He's usable. He's fine, I guess, if you really want to. What do you think? Have you ever tried using him?
For sure. I mean, the biggest problem is, of course, this starter weapon. Like, get it that heck out of his inventory. I think I've said that about, like, half the lance users we've gotten so far. It's like, what's this starter weapon? Get rid of it. But once you do that, it should be better. It is noted that because Devdan is a halberdier, he can use the Night Ward to boost his defense in the moment, as well as to get a higher speed growth. So if you do wish to do that, make sure that you just absolutely make sure that you take advantage of the Night Ward. It's silly good on this unit, just really. Aside from that, I mean, I kind of agree with your analysis where he's like that unit where if he was worse, he'd be funny to train, and if he was better, he'd just be good to use. But, you know, he's just kind of this weird, just one of these weird units where it's like, well, you know, yeah, there's nothing really exciting about using Devdan except if it's been a while.
He's a meme unit, but you know,
yeah, he's a meme unit. He's a meme unit.
Yeah, I think people think of me with Devdan and Dunvet only because I made my Reddit avatar that, and then I started incorporating it into videos randomly, and then my other editors sometimes would put Dunvet as like a representation of me in my videos, and it's kind of spiraled out of control. It was never meant to be that, but here we are.
It was never meant to be. You always wanted to be the executor?
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. I never really thought of representing myself in my videos, but here we are. I have a total of 1 Tanith to look at. And this is our starting gear, stats, etc. And these are our growth rates. So Tanith is one of the few pre-promoted flyers in the series, and one of the really, really good ones. Maybe even one of the, not better than FE10 Haar, but kind of up there, like really, really strong. Especially if you leave availability out of the picture and just look at, hey, how good is this unit when you get them? She's super powerful. The high speed base, like 24. Everything else is like, looks kind of average, but her class is just so good it makes up for it and then some. And also her weapon ranks are insane. A rank swords, B rank lances. Kind of funny that she's a sword-based Falcon Knight. I guess she was meant to show off the Sonic Sword, which is a sword that's effective against Wyvern Riders and other flyers as far as I know, with really good might. I'm gonna give it to Ike because our Ike is magic blessed. There's like night magic on him, but it's funny to use it on Tanith because she's one rounds Wyverns with it and a lot of other stuff as well. But other than that, she can use like forged steel lances or even forged silvers at some point to reach 1 rounds, because her strength is a little bit like on the average / low side, but she has the weapon ranks to make up for it. And then just rescue dropping as always, flyer utility, getting over rough terrain, which is very common in late game Path of Radiance, is all super good. And she has the reinforced skill, which calls 3 NPCs or 3 yellow units, like Lethe and Mordecai were in chapter 8 or 9, I want to say. I think it's 9. And you can kind of control them, but not really. You can direct them somewhere. You can make them roam around, but you can't really make them attack like a specific person. But you can use them as distractions. You can use them to accomplish like little tasks. Generally, distractions is like their main thing. You can use them like disposable units like the summons and FE8, and that can be useful. I don't like using this all the time because I know that it adds more time to the time it takes to beat the chapter, and Path Range is already a little slow. But there's no, like, I don't want to penalize it for that. I still think it's a good ability. I just prefer not to use it personally. But when you think about it, it's really good. You use it twice as map, so you can summon 6 NPCs. The strongest of the bunch, the Falcon Knight you get through doing that, is, I think in Maniac mode he's stronger than Tanith herself. I think in Heart mode it's not the case, but he's still like really good stat-wise. So I'll probably call him at least once this chapter just to show it off. So that's another great tool in our arsenal, and that's already a really big arsenal, very versatile unit. And you know, if your Jill is really bad, mine isn't, I thought she was, but she's not. And if your Marcia is really bad or she's dead, this will make a fine extra flyer for you. And if they're not dead, she's still super useful. Just doesn't replace them, she just adds to the fun. So yeah, there's almost absolutely nothing wrong with this unit. What do you think?
Yeah, I would agree. Like, there's very little reason to not field Tanith at any point. Like, she's very good. You kind of mentioned like availability. Her availability is honestly still great. Like, there's a lot of Path of Radiance left to play that Tanith can help out in and can be useful in. Speaking on her weapon ranks for a moment, there is kind of a trend in the late game Path of Radiance where when a pre-promoted unit shows up who can use 2 weapons, they'll have the higher weapon ranks than like the off weapon, so to speak. Like the one that the earlier promoted class wasn't able to use. It's just kind of like a trend in Path of Radiance. You'll notice it in a few of the pre-promotes we'll have coming up as well. But yeah, no, the ranks are definitely really cool. Absolutely love them. The stats, like, the only thing that has me maybe somewhat concerned is the 32 HP, but honestly, I remember, like, of all the personal experience I've had using Tanith, even without, like, feeding her tons of EXP, just fielding level 10 Tanith, these stats are totally appropriate for this chapter or the next few. She totally keeps up, and as you said before, if you don't have, like, a monster of a Jill or a monster of a Marcia, Tanith is probably going to become, like, one of your better units very quickly.
Yeah, definitely. And then, aside from Tanith, we have another unit that'll be really good, and that is Reyson over here. He is our first and only Huron, unless we count NPC Leanne. Of course we don't. And Reyson, at his base form, is just a flying dancer with, 5 moves the same, but flying over terrain comes in handy every once in a while. So just based on that alone, he's as good as like Ninian, Larum, Tethys, FE9, people like that. Just good and useful. But then on top of that, he adds the ability to transform, and his transformed form has more movement. I don't remember exactly how much, but we'll figure it out this chapter. And then it dances 4 people at once instead of 1, like in a diamond all around him, just like the FE4 dancers, like Sylvia. And that's in this game where you have so many good units with the ability to move again after attacking or trading or dropping anything. I can't overstate how good it is, so I'll just dedicate the rest of the playthrough to showing off how good it is. Reyson is phenomenal at making people just to keep him going, basically. And you can attack. You get 4 extra attacks or heals or rescues or drops with this unit from turn 2 onwards, which is just incredible. If you don't use a Lagustone on him, you can usually transform him by turn, I want to say it's turn 5 or 6 when he transforms, which for most people, that's still like a reasonably high amount of map left to play, where he can be like that much more overpowered. And he still flies when he's transformed too, so extremely versatile. Once he's transformed, I usually dedicate my entire turn to figuring out, okay, how can I maximize my use of Reyson just to make sure that I get the most value out of it. And it's so powerful and so satisfying. So sometimes people call overpowered units boring because it's like, oh, you just move hard towards the enemy and they die. But Reyson is one of those units that, even though he's obviously really overpowered, he's overpowered in a fun way where you can use him to do all kinds of funny things. And he'll be really helpful for trading on level units that you might want to bring up to par in that regard. I found that my training for like bad units in my FE9 Iron Man was greatly more interesting once I got Reyson, also a lot easier. So I greatly enjoy using Reyson. What about you?
Myself as well, honestly. I'm not too experienced with the whole like Lagustone Reyson play. I understand like it very quickly sort of pays off for itself and that you're going to get more dances over time. But I still often find too much use for the turn 1 dance if I'm going to use a dancer to kind of like warrant having an empty turn using the Lagustone. So I'm actually really curious to see like what sort of things you chain together and what sort of things you usually do with this Lagustone. I have a couple ideas in mind for some chapters. I can maybe come up with one here. It would probably involve a lot of like rescue dropping and sort of like give commands or drop commands or other LTC-ish type maneuvers, I can imagine. Yeah. But yeah, no, the ability to dance for 4 people at once is just like, it's absolutely tremendous. And, if a map goes that long that you can just transform him naturally, yeah, you're going to have a whole lot of fun with Reyson. As far as dancers go, he's honestly just pretty good all around. He has kind of an oddly high speed and luck stat that gives him actually a decent amount of avoid, although you really just shouldn't let this guy be getting into danger anyway. But there have been times when I've been playing and I was like, alright, like let me just, put Reyson somewhere. For whatever reason, I was like, let me just put Reyson somewhere. Usually it's like during the final map and I was speedrunning and just trying to get this guy killed already. I was like, let me just drop him in a horde of enemies. He just dodges all of them. I'm like, bro, come on, seriously. So, you generally shouldn't let your dancers come under attack, but if this guy comes under attack, there's a decent chance he might just dodge it anyway.
Yeah,
That's another fun fact about Reyson.
Yeah, I found his res is like unreasonably high for a level 3 unit, especially. He has 20 res. That's more than most of my units for sure. Magical enemies will not kill him, which is good because this chapter has a couple of long-range tomes that I would be really afraid of if it wasn't for really high res. Most dancers do have more res than defense, but not many of them have 10 times as much res as they have defense.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
This is insane.
This is Janaff, and I have very little experience with the Hawks in this game. Radiant Dawn, they're some of my favorite units, but in this game, I just never really had the urge to try them. They kind of like, if you're a late joining unit, you have to be somewhat spectacular to be noticed by most players, me included, and otherwise you're probably just going to get deployed once, and that's about it, and then you're just done. Whoops. Janaff is funny in this game because he has the same transformation gauge as Lethe, so he starts off untransformed, which means at the very least that you don't have to invest a Laguz Stone or a bunch of turns waiting for him to get going. And I think if you're looking for someone who like one-rounds enemies left and right or has high range or something, he's pretty garbo in that regard. Like, he's not going to do that for you. He's not that good. But I've been told by smarter players than me that at least if you want a unit that just needs to fly and have salvageable combat, that can kind of like fight a couple enemies here and there, like take down a wyvern over the course of 2 turns, he can do that. He can do that just fine. Maybe you can airlift someone over there while your better flyers are occupied doing combat. There are some things he can do, and because he doesn't take any resources to do them, he's pretty fine doing it. And of course, he does have those insane Laguz growths. Like, he has 130% HP growth, he has 55 strength, 70 skill, 65 speed. But I don't think he levels up very fast, even though we're in the mid-late game. It's not going to happen a whole lot, and you're probably not going to see these growths proc a whole lot, so the adrenaline factor is not very big here. But they exist, and when he does get there, it's kind of glorious. We had it a couple times with Lethe and Mordecai, and it is really fun. That is all I know about Janaff, and it's all theory. What about you, Reysons? Any practical utility that you've done with him?
Janaff, when he comes in, I feel like this is the kind of unit who he joins, and if you're playing like 0% growth, it's like, oh my god, this unit is absolutely amazing. Right? I mean, like, his bases are actually, and people have said salvageable combat, his bases, when he gets his transformation gauge, is like a bunch more strength and speed. He's probably doubling a lot of people at this stage in the game. Pretty much the only people who's not doubling is like this Swordmaster boss that we have in this chapter. I think he's not going to double on hard mode, right? Like, but come on, like, are you really going to be that picky? So you're right, he has some difficulty one-rounding, but his stats are, as you said, it's passably good combat. And if it weren't for this being Path of Radiance, where you could just vex someone ahead of the curve and be like level 20 promoted by this point, then that would be really good. But I think because Janaff is in this game where it's really easy to get someone ahead of the XP curve, that sort of hurts his utility a bit compared to some of the other people in this cast, right? Like, if this was just a traditional Fire Emblem game, absolutely this guy would be like, oh, like a godsend. But because it's really easy to just train other people, it makes him a bit worse. I will say that the whole first turn transformation thing is absolutely massive with Janaff. I would not recommend giving him the Demi Band. Just use his 5 turns of transformation. Once you're done with that, if you want to like trade over the Demi Band to him, by all means, and emphasis on this, trade over the Demi Band. Because if you try to do something funny where you like put it in his inventory and then like leave or unequip it, he'll actually start the chapter with 0 gauge. So don't make that mistake of giving him the Demi Band in preps or in base, because that'll actually reduce his gauge to 0.
But if you give him a
For the start
band,
of the chapter.
like another band, like the Wyvern band, for example, equip that and then just put the other thing in his inventory?
Actually, yeah, I think that would work. If you did like the Wyvern Band on top and then the Demi Band below, I think that would actually work.
Okay.
Whereas in the other cases, like if you unequip Demi Band, it always sets your gauge to 0, and there's no way to get it back up.
Yeah. I mean, just to make it clear, I'm deploying Janaff because he has a side objective in this chapter that only he and Ulki can do. And other than that, I don't really plan on using them a whole lot in this playthrough because my slots are going to be very filled. Like, I had trouble fitting everyone in this chapter and previous. So probably won't have a lot of experimentation with them, but I've noted for future playthroughs.
Yeah. I do also want to just briefly mention his personal skill, because people who've played Radiant Dawn more than Path of Radiance probably know this one. This is not his Radiant Dawn personal skill that's hit plus 20. This is like hit plus 5.
Oh shit, that's terrible.
Likewise, Ulki's one is like hit plus 5 or avoid plus 5 or
Damn,
whatever. Whenever he gets to
crap.
Ulki, it's like, yeah, no, they're not amazing, but That's pretty much all I had to say about this unit.
Fair enough. All right, more than I thought. Let us move on to Ulki. I have his stats screen as well over here. So Ulki is undeployed, and from the gauge alone, you can kind of tell why that is. He doesn't transform instantly. In fact, he takes about as long to transform as Mordecai, I think, which means that by the time he transforms automatically, the chapters can be like almost over, depending on how fast you go about them. His stats, I don't have a great vision on these stats compared to Janaff's, but they don't look super spectacular. I think it's interesting that in Radiant Dawn, their strength and speed are kind of reversed. In this one, Ulki is slower, with more strength, whereas in Radiant Dawn, that's Janaff. So anything I can intuitively say about these units based on Radiant Dawn is completely out of the window for me, so I'm out of my depth. But from what I've been told, again, shoutouts to, I think his proper YouTube name was Tyler, Typhoon Carter, there we go. It was something along those lines. There we go, Typhoon Carter. He was like, yeah, Ulki's one of the worst units in the game because the gauge is so much worse than Janaff, and that's like the one thing that keeps Janaff adrift, is the fact that he can instantly do something for some work. But the fact you have to make work to make Ulki start transformed is already so bad because they're already not very good at fighting. They're okay, like if you're playing a 0% growth, like it's okay. But might not even still be in your top 13. It's the same like excellent growths, like 140 HP, strength 60, skill 65, speed 60, but you're not going to see him a whole lot, and they're not going to do enough to repair his weapon. And with Janaff, like, you kind of just work with what you've got because you get it for free. But with Ulki, I feel like you would really, you really feel the downsides of the Laguz, like the gauge, but also the beak. Only 7 might and locked to 1 range, and it can never improve, unlike in Radiant Dawn. So that's just something that makes these units feel bad and not worth investing in. With Janaff, you work around it because you get it for free. But in Ulki, it's like, okay, I need to invest into this unit and make him become like usable at all because he just can't fight when he's untransformed. And then you get a 1 range locked unit with 7 might on his weapon. It's just, and then like you said, vigilance. Apparently, it's only 5% dodge. I didn't even know because it didn't factor in for me at all. But that's also kind of garbo. So seems like a kind of a cringe unit to me. What about you?
Yeah, no, he's pretty crap, to be honest with you. And hold on a sec, 49 avoid. Maybe I gotta redo the math on that because maybe it's popping up
24,
with more than 49.
34, maybe it's like 15?
Maybe it's 15? I don't know. I remember it being like significantly less than Radiant Dawn. You know what? Okay, come on.
It doesn't matter though, like, it doesn't matter. Yeah. I don't care if he gets hit. It's on the bench.
Yeah, no, like he's on the bench. Yeah, this guy's kind of crap.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not only does he start off with bad gauge, he also has like worse stats than pretty much most people that you're gonna have at this point. Like, okay, even if he's transformed, right? Like even if he's transformed, he's still probably not doubling. And he's even if he were to double, he's still definitely not 1 rounding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Janaff's like right on the edge, right? Whereas Ulki's below it. Of doubling.
Yeah, no. Ulki's just completely below everything here. Like, can I try to find something nice to say about him? Does he have a lot of defense and HP? Yeah, sure, I guess.
I mean, he flies. There's useful flyers, but this is a game where you get kind of a lot of flyers, honestly, that can help you rescue drop people around. Mm-hmm. So if that's what Ulki's doing, then, like, who cares?
Can Hawks shove? Or no?
I mean, we'll find out when we have Janaff on this map. But
yeah, we'll find out.
They don't have Kanto though, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, well, not for long.
Although we have one more important thing to do that we can do in preps with the amazing music. That way it'll be easier for people to tell it's over. You're not interested, and that is looking at Calill's stats and maybe talking about it a little bit. I know Reyson was very disappointed I didn't show her info convo on screen, so I had to promise to get Largo's info convo on screen because apparently they're both very funny. But unfortunately, I already did it, so we just have Calill now. Well, I mean, we lost Tormod, and Calill's like a trained Tormod, kind of, with some obvious differences. Unfortunately, Calill chose knives for her career choice, so no staves for her. I guess it's kind of fair after Saleh and Pence that they were like, you know what, a Sage with staves is kind of too good as a pre-promote, so we'll just give you knives instead as like a bit of a drawback, and if you train a Sage yourself, like Soren, you can have staves instead. It's like a bit of a balance thing, which I kind of like. And of course, knives are just funny on Sages in general. Anytime you can get a knife kill, it's kind of funny. Calill's best trait, I think, are like our magic and speed base are pretty good both. So offensively, she seems kind of adept. And then Nihil is not that big of a deal, but what I like about this screen here is her weapon ranks. She's B in all the magic types, and I think all the long-range homes are C, so she can use all of them at base. So anytime you just need a quick bit of chip damage on a boss, or you like a certain enemy that dodged an attack, or you didn't crit with your killing edge, you can finish them off with Meteor or Bolting or Blizzard, which I think you can get at some point, and just kind of done with it. And all this is free. I don't need to invest anything into Calill to do this. Just the deployment slot and that's it, and I think that's super good value. The drawback for Calill is, of course, it's just a little fragile. 40 total bulk. It takes like not that much attack to 2 KO, or like I think 20 something attack, like 25, 26-ish by my math. Yeah, that sounds about right. And she's dead in 2 hits, so you gotta protect her a little bit. Enemies will be dissuaded from attacking her a little bit because of 2 range, but if they can put her to low HP, they will, so you have to be a bit careful. But if you do play carefully, then she's gonna be really nice. Not as great as a trained Soren or even Tormod or Illyana, but serviceable enough. Probably not gonna like do a whole lot of like enemy phase combat because of the fragile issue, no supports, but serviceable enough to where she can like hold her own against like 1 or 2 enemies, and that's pretty good value again for a unit you don't have to do anything for. What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like, I'm kind of curious why you say that, like, she's not as good as a trained Soren, because to be honest with you, these stats look like they're probably going to be enough to double, and then this 19 magic is probably going to be enough to kill, so, like, I feel like anything stronger than this is just really overkill. Like, obviously, we can't really look at the enemy stats right now to, like, actually verify this.
Permission to
but
check
in all my
stats for comparison?
Yeah, take a look. I just throw her at some enemies, see if she's doing the job. Hey, see, like, he's got what, 1 more speed? Come on.
It's more for Soren specifically. For me, it's like Calill was the same-ish bulk. I think Soren got a robe at some point, and like slightly more speed. But then Soren's like all the earth support, right, from Ike and his dark affinity.
Fair enough.
So he can enemy phase more feasibly, and then he has stabs on top of that.
Well, yeah, that's true. Like, the Seth utility is something different. I'm just talking, like, offensively, combat-wise. Because that's definitely, like, Calill's identity, is that, like, if you need a combat mage, she arrives and she just does literally whatever it is that you need a combat mage to do, like, straight out the gate. Aside from potentially, like, you know, taking attacks from a million wyverns, but, like, come on.
No, offensively,
like,
I think she's, like, a match. There might be some enemies she doesn't double that Soren does, but, you know, I love it.
Yeah, and the best part is, just as you mentioned, she does all of this for free. Right, like, you say, oh, well, a trained Soren is better. Well, yeah, but you gotta put resources into that trained Soren. This unit, you don't. Like, you literally just get her. And it's not even like there's an availability issue, because, like, there's still a lot of chapters left to be played with her. I will say, if we switch back over to the skills, the Nile.
Yeah.
The Nile's kind of funny. I think next chapter is this best application by far. And then, pretty much for the rest of the game, the Nile is more or less completely useless. Really, the only thing that I find it useful for is like getting through Miracle. Maybe there's another boss later on that has Miracle, I believe. That's not the boss of the next chapter. But in the next chapter in particular, it's like I find it very useful.
Yeah, that's very funny. I didn't realize that.
That's just give her like Nile. Just give her Nile, give her the bolting, or Forged Thunder or whatever, and she's like, oh,
yeah,
okay, I'll finish off this boss for you. Easy.
Very good. Also, she's effective against like a lot of different enemy types if you want her to be, although its Path of Radiance effectiveness and the Tome Might isn't very high, but she is effective against, effectively, wow, I think dragons, I don't know if that counts wyverns, does it?
Wyvern, Thunder, so Thunder is only wyverns, or not wyverns, Thunder is only like Dragon Lagoose.
Okay, yeah, so it's just Lagoose types basically, she's effective against, and flyers, I guess, with the wind tomes?
Yeah, flyers with wind tomes, and of course beasts with the fire tomes.
Yeah, so that can be helpful too, I guess.
Yeah, I tend to, when I get to this point, because they're like, there hasn't been a mage in a while. Yeah, there's been Tormod, but Tormod is usually like about as good as Soren. Because there hasn't been a mage in a while, very oftentimes Calill shows up and she's just my best magic user.
Yeah. There's no real mid-ground mage. I guess Tormod is as close as it gets, and he's on level 2.
Yeah, no. Like, he's underleveled. He's a piece of work, right? Like, you gotta improve him.
Yeah, for sure. Tauroneo is a unit I've never really used full time, and I don't expect I'll ever do it all that much because he's just so hard to lug around. Because at this point in the game, mobility really is king, and you've seen units like Titania and Oscar and Ike even just effortlessly survive enemy phase. And the usual draw of a general is that they can do that for you. So, he doesn't offer much in that regard that you don't already have, but he's just worse in every other area. Attack speed is not a big problem for him. He doesn't double a whole lot with only 13 speed. He can make up for that sometimes using Resolve whenever he's at half HP. He gets, I think, 50% extra strength, skill, and speed, which really makes his offense very good. Of course, the drawback is that he has to get to 24 HP in the first place, which can be tough because he's so tanky and enemies will often like ignore him if they can. And if he does that at 24 HP, then he's a bit fragile because he's only at 24 HP. So it's a bit of a weird trade-off, and it's never really needed. But it is really fun to do this, and I've seen it used to good effect in like 0% growth runs where you don't really have many options because a lot of units in this game are growth units. And in those cases, Tauroneo actually becomes a really, really powerful unit that can actually do a lot of work on enemy phase relatively safely. So that's really fun. Just keep him away from mages because his resistance is kind of and he's actually like bulky enough to take a couple hits even at half HP, as far as I know. Funnily enough, he uses swords, spears, and I think he can also use axes. No, he can't. I thought he could. Oh, that's Radiant Dawn. That's right. So
Yeah, it's Radiant Dawn.
He's a sword general. Yeah, which is kind of different than what I'm used to, I guess. Do you remember if all generals in this game use swords and lances?
Yeah, all generals. So all armor knights use lances, and then when they promote to general, they get swords.
Okay. I somehow I thought that like Gatrie and stuff would use like axes, but I guess I just never really used them enough to figure that out. But yeah,
too much Radiant Dawn.
Yeah, I mean, there's no such thing, but yeah. But I mean, super fun unit to use if you get into combat, but usually not worth in the sense of like you're not getting anything you don't already have, except fun. But sometimes it's all about fun. That's my take on Tauroneo. Have you ever used this guy?
Well, so I will say, like, you're right that his movement is bad, but there's one situation where his movement doesn't really matter, and that's actually the exact situation we're in, where like you recruit him and he can just kind of help you get through or just help you kill this room. Even his combat against the boss isn't even like that atrocious, if I recall correctly. So in that regard, like he's already got at least one situation where he can do this for you for free, right? I guess he technically costs an Ike action, but like, come on.
Not even that, because
Like-
I could still attack after talking to him.
That's true, yeah, as we demonstrated. So he can at the very least do that. And his combat stats for that job and really for a lot of combat afterwards are like totally serviceable. Like, I mean, 22 strength, 22 defense, that's enough for like literally any physical combat in the entire game, pretty much. You're right, he could maybe get wrecked if like 100 mages show up at him at once, but I honestly can't even think of many places in the game that could do that. I will say, he's another one of those units that's not really served by being in Path of Radiance, right? If he was in a more traditional Fire Emblem game where it was harder to just get everyone leveled up to, 2020 if you wanted to, then yeah, this guy would be like amazing. If you just transplanted this guy into a GBA game, like people wouldn't be talking so much trash about generals, right? but
Yeah.
but unfortunately, he kind of inhabits Path of Radiance, and in this game, like anyone could be amazing at combat.
Yeah, Tauroneo's
So-
good in the Binding Blade.
Ooh. Which chapter are we going to put him in? Are we going to replace Douglas or no?
Let's talk about Ranulf before we completely forget to, because this is a unit I often forget about when it comes to Path of Radiance. It's a really hard unit to describe because I've never really used him beyond his joining map, and especially with his stats untransformed and his claw stats being not shown right now, it's kind of hard to get a gauge on exactly how good he is. Nope, that pun was not intended. I think Ranulf generally is going to have slightly better stats at this point than Muarim usually. I think compared to mine, Muarim is a little bit better right now, but that might just be because he's transformed. I think Ranulf is like fine, like pretty decent. He does start at 10 gauge and he gained 4 at the start of this turn. So he's going to transform in 2 turns, which is not too terrible. And if you're only deploying 1 Legoose, you just slap the demi-band on him and he's pretty good. From what I can tell, this speed is enough to double once he's transformed. And I think the strength combined with the claw, it's probably not enough to kill like bulkier enemies. It might be like borderline on something like a Cavalier, but generally decent enough to where, it's a good filler unit once he's transformed or if you have the demi-band to spare, basically. And that's really all I got. It's still unfortunate that being a Legoose at this point in the game is not great because, no 2 range, not countering all these bow users, all these mages, not being able to attack at 2 range on enemies reduces flexibility a little bit. But he's still highly mobile, he's still pretty fast, he's pretty tanky with 46 HP, and then increased probably like 20-ish defense. We'll have to see when he transforms at some point. So I think he's like decent, but Legoose. That's how it would sound Ranulf at this point in the game. Like, okay filler, but Legoose. What about you?
Yeah, pretty much the same thing. I mean, the only enemies I can really think of that he'd for sure one round would probably be like mages and maybe sages.
Even though 19 strength looks pretty good, although I guess when he transforms, he gets like +4 or +3 or however much it is. So maybe it's going to be different when he does transform. But in general, these stats, like in no particular area, are really good enough to get any work done. Maybe the defense would be, and I think it's more like Ranulf is not really held back just by being a Laguz. Like, yeah, the Laguz introduces some disadvantages. It's more that at this stage in the game, there's nothing in these stats that makes him exceptional, right? There's no special utility he can provide. So there's no one stat that's like really high above all the others, which is kind of what you really need to succeed in a Fire Emblem game, unless all of your stats are really high. Like you need at least something you can play off of, right? You need at least some kind of like really high strength or really high defense or really high speed to double everything, including the really difficult things to double. And he just doesn't really have any of those. So like, yeah, all of his stats are pretty good, but it's also really hard to justify bringing him in an environment where you could have just backed up, Boyd or Jill or Titania or Oscar or whatever to a high level to just completely eclipse all these stats. I do think he's fun, and I do use him just because I like him as a character. Like you're probably not going to have 14 units better than Ranulf, but you're going to have like 6 or 7 at least, and that's probably usually enough to like give him a spot on the bench while the other units are just like providing utility, like rescuing or healing or whatever.
Yeah.
That said, I mean, we have him on the map now.
Yeah.
So you might as well figure out how to use him on this map at the very least.
Yeah, I'm probably going to have him set up kills for other people most of the time. That's what I'm thinking.
He'll be pretty good at that, I imagine.
Yeah, I don't remember him one-run KOing a whole lot of things, so it shouldn't be too hard to get that done. Haar. So the big puzzle for me with Haar, just like with Ranulf, is just I'm not super familiar with him as a unit. I usually don't deploy him, but he is one of the better units at this point in the game if you don't train that many. I've trained a lot, but if you train less units than I have, then there's probably a free slot here where he fits in. There are a couple maps left where being a flyer is good enough to where you can put up with stats that are not as good as Jill's. And honestly, Star's stats aren't even bad. Like, his strength is pretty decent. His bulk is pretty good. The speed is like, I actually had a little bit of a cheat sneak peek at some enemy stats here just to like wonder like how much does Haar actually double attack. And the conclusion is he can double some enemies. Not like fast cats. Some of the Cavaliers he doesn't double. But if it's something like an Archer or a Sage or some of the slower Cavaliers, yeah, he can double attack. He can double attack Warriors, stuff like that. And if he doubles, he could generally kill, either like quadruple with the Brave Axe he comes with, or something else. He has base B rank and axes, which I think is enough for silver in this game, but even if not, you can just give him a Forged Steel and just go to town. So generally he'll be able to get by with whatever weapons you have lying around. He can use most of the weapons you need him to, and he's pretty solid in that way. There's one map coming up, the Eat Rock map, the boulder map, where most units are like heavily hindered terrain-wise, but Haar can just fly over everything, so that's really good. And guard in this game, I think, is cancel, so just like he has in Radiant Dawn, but with a different name. That can be kind of funny, but usually you don't count on it. This is like an extra durability boost. So, decent enough filler. Sometimes he's too slow to double, and sometimes he's bad against magic, but other than that, pretty serviceable. And with the bows only being double might, it's not much that can threaten him on enemy phase. So, pretty decent tank, it just isn't around a whole lot. So that's why he usually doesn't end up being praised as much as he's in Radiant Dawn. But he's pretty good overall, I think. What about you?
Yeah, I tend to use Haar pretty much every time. And, like, not because he's outstandingly good, but just because, like, he's good enough to be included on pretty much every map from here on out. Like, his stats aren't terrible. They're not, like, one-rounding things, but he's still able to, pick units up. He's still able to drop them. He still has high move. This B-rank axes thing, it isn't enough to use silver, but that's it. He can use literally all the other axes in the game. It's just silver axe that he can't use. And I think as well for lances, I think the silver lance is the only thing he can't use. But like, there's a bunch of other good stuff. You can use Forged Steel, you can use Brave, you can use the Brave Axe that he comes with right now, you can use Tomahawk and Spear and whatnot. It's like, all of those things he still totally has. And, I mean, just in general, like, yeah, we said the same thing with Ranulf. Oh no, you're going to have back someone up to like 1,000,000 billion stats above him at this point. Well, yeah, but the difference between Haar and Ranulf is that Haar has the additional utility of being a flyer. Of being able to pick someone up and drop them, of being able to move around through terrain unmitigated. And so that's usually enough to, with these serviceable stats, that's usually enough to warrant an inclusion of most of the maps from here on out. So I don't really know much about his cancel skill. I mean, it's cancel. Like, it's not really that impactful. You know,
I
you just
don't even know what it
kinda-
runs off. It's probably skill percent.
I think so. It's probably skill. I think the tooltip technically lies because it says it negates one enemy attack, but I think if an enemy doubles you and you vantage cancel them, you negate both of them. But I mean, you know, that's nitpicking at this point.
What a
Uh,
lies.
Lies,
All right,
I know.
All right,
Yeah,
if we've
no,
gotten to
he's
nitpicking
pretty
that
good, though.
point, I'm gonna move while we talk more. Cause damn.
Yeah, no, he's good. Like, he's usually worth including.
And I think the first one on the menu is indeed Bastian, so we'll go with him first.
Let's go with it.
Yes. I don't have too much experience with Bastian, but if you look at his stats, it's not super hard to see what he does and what he doesn't. What he does do is do a reasonable amount of damage for one hit. 19 magic is not terrible when you're hitting on resistance. 16 speed is not enough to double a whole lot. It's lower than Haar's base speed, and he's like borderline. Whereas like he can double some things, like you could double Armor Knights, sure. You can maybe double some Cavaliers or Wyverns maybe, but not a whole lot. And then his bulk is kind of not very good. It's like he's not going to die in one round, but he's probably going to die in like 2 or maybe 3 max. So not good enough for exposure. So kind of like one of those filler, you get him for free, so use him while you can and deploy him if you want. He does have reasonably good weapon ranks. A Wind, B Fire, and C Thunder is better than Calill's bases. I think they're C all around. It doesn't add too much. The most important benchmark is C to use the long range tomes. And you can use those to chip enemies without having to get in the way. If he had staves, like he does in Rainy Dawn, it'd be a lot better too, but he chose knives for some reason, probably to nerf the fact that he's a sage. They probably felt like Pent was too good, so they went with Bastian instead. Corrosion is, as far as I know, absolutely useless. I don't even want to use it most of the time, because there's a chance that he is like a droppable weapon. You use it on you and you get less uses back when you proc Corrosion. It's not even like guaranteed, it's a chance-based skill.
Yeah.
So that's garbage. So it's kind of like a funny unit. That you can use if you want to. You can use him in this chapter while he's free. Maybe finish off an enemy or set up a kill for someone with him. Because he's generally not going to one-run a whole lot of things. But most of the time you want to keep him out of danger because he's not that good. But he's alright. He gets the job done sometimes, even if that job is just chip damage. So I don't hate him, but he definitely joins too late to be considered like a good unit. He's just fine, right?
Yeah, I was about to say, it sounds like you have like only negative things to say about Bastian here. So, like,
I don't hate him. It's just there's not a whole lot of good to say about him. It's fine, right? Have you ever
yeah,
used him?
I've used him a couple times, I think, here and there. And like, he has stats that are passable for like chip damage and stuff. And I know we said that about Haar last map, but Haar can like actually one round some things, or like some things. Bastian joins. These stats are actually pretty much worse than Calill's stats when she joins. The only thing notably that's better is like his defense is a little bit better. Really just all around his bulk is like slightly better than Calill's. But that's pretty much it. He has the same magic, he has worse speed, and the weapon ranks are since he has siege tome ranks, it's all pretty much irrelevant. Again, if you want to use him, like he's here on this map, so hey, you might as well. Like, I think there's some reinforcements that show up in the right at some point, or maybe these fires move over, so maybe there's an enemy you can kill right now. I'm like, that can be useful. But yeah, overall, I'm not really too impressed with Bastian.
Yeah.
There's
not a
logically
whole lot,
speaking, there's really not much reason to deploy him, I guess, unless you needed to fire off siege tomes like more times per chapter. Like, I'm really trying to contrive a situation where it's like definitely the right move to be using Bastian, and I can't really think of any.
Yeah.
Outside of something like a ROM hack, like 0% growths, or some like really extraordinary circumstance that I can't really foresee right now.
That's okay. It's not your job to come up with Bastian use cases. He's not an NST, you know what I mean?
That's true.
Let's do Lucia next. She's right here. You have her stats on the thing. Kind of interesting as a unit, in my opinion, because I've at least used Bastian to chip a couple people, but I've never really found a way to make Lucia very useful. Like a Swordmaster class, we've already went over why this is not a very good class. It has a crit bonus, but pretty much nothing else to its name that makes it stand out compared to other units. The lack of 2 range and lack of amount already are hurt. They could be redeemed if there was something else that made Lucia very strong. And when I'm looking around in the stat screen, I don't really see a reason to use her. There's nothing that's really like, oh, sure, you have to deal with these and these drawbacks, but at least there's a big something here. I mean, her portrait is nice. She comes with some good gear, like the Laguz Guard. It's going to be useful in a couple chapters. We have 2 now, I believe. She has okay speed, but not enough attack to 2-hit KO. And I don't think even a tough... Sometimes she might not even have attack to like 4-hit KO, so even a hit and a crit won't kill. That depends on the enemy type, of course. But generally, I don't think she hits the threshold she needs to. I do notice her growth rates are really good. Like, they're almost as good as Shinon's, except she has like 20% less in strength. So that could be a funny way to... like, you get some dopamine out of it, but it's only for 8 levels, so it's not even that funny. So even in the comedy department, she kind of falls flat. Yeah, I've never really been too impressed with Lucia. Just like with Bastian, she's not going to die in 1 round, but it'll probably take 2 or 3. And the counterattacks she'll deal out are not worth exposing her for. Unlike, say, Soren, for example, he doesn't have the greatest durability either, but at least he's going to kill the enemy that's going to attack him at this point in the game. So, yeah, never too impressed with Lucia. Last thing I'll say about her, parity is very garbo in this game because, as you can see, it cancels a lot of the bonuses that you could be making use of, and usually you're better at manipulating those bonuses than the enemy. That the enemy never has supports to begin with, and they almost rarely have skill bonuses, so there's not really a point to having this skill. You'd rather remove it a lot of the cases, and it actually, like, it negates her support. So, like, if you support with, like, Bastian or Lindsay or something, she's not going to get the benefit with parity active.
Yeah.
So, yuck. Do you have anything positive to say about Lucia?
Kind of thing. I mean, like, I do think the high growths is, like, a reason enough to use her in case you like the dopamine hits from level ups and want that on a sword master. That said, you know, her base is, maybe it's kind of unfair to like compare Bastian to Calill or Lucia to what's his face, Stefan.
Yeah.
But again, like, we haven't been deploying Stefan, and his stats are pretty much strictly better in every category than Lucia's. Like, I think luck. Like, she has more luck by a lot, but like, that's it.
Yeah.
That's all she's got over him, and we're not deploying him. So, I really, similar to Bastian, I don't really see like a logical reason for us to deploy him. If we wanted to use her to, like, you know, get more dopamine hit level ups, yeah, absolutely we could. But I think right now, at the stage where this playthrough's at, we don't really care to use her or deploy her. Maybe in some future playthrough we will feel the desire, but not today. I will say something about parity. You kind of said like it's a terrible skill. I think it's like a good skill, but it's just in the wrong game. Like, Path of Radiance doesn't really have many terrain things. Like, for example, right, if I could equip this skill in like 3 houses, I totally would. Because there's like, well,
to get like enemies off of forest and stuff.
Yeah, to get like enemies off of forests. Like, there's sometimes where you have a build and it's like, all right, this build does great up until the point where an enemy in a forest attacks me. Right, and it's like, oh, yeah, miss and you die. It's like, oh crap, never mind. So
all these vantage builds, yeah.
If I could have a skill like that, like in maybe a different game where there's more terrain hanging around, that's basically the only thing that like you ever use it to negate. Even in Radiant Dawn, you only ever use it to like negate terrain bonuses, right?
Yeah, in endgame, basically only.
Yeah.
I guess like mastery enemies, but they're so rare, like Izuka, that's about it.
Yeah, and even then it's like, or getting rid of leadership stars or something, but in this game there's like no terrain anywhere.
Absolutely great.
Like, there's these 4 bushes and that's it. What you think of them?
The largest of O's. I'm actually super excited because in all my times of like doing tier lists and like reviews and just talking about units with people, Largo is one of these units that is like kind of my blind spots, like one of those late joining units that I never really deployed other than their initial chapter. So today here, I actually would like to commit to Largo and like actually using him because he seems really funny. His growths are like really insane, especially in strength. He reminds me a bit of Boyd with less bulk somehow, but kind of the same funny stats and like strength and speed. He just seems like a very charming unit. My experience with Largo is generally that you'll think, oh, he's got like 52 HP, so he'll probably survive this enemy phase, right? And then 2 enemies hit him and he's like almost dead. I'm like, okay, maybe that was not a great idea. And this is going to be an extra big handicap in an ignorance playthrough where, like, if it was someone like Titania or Ike, I know roughly how many hits it's going to take to kill him. With Largo, I have no idea, so we're just going to have to, you know, play it by ear and hopefully it works out. I might have to give him some like the Lagoose Guard to not die. That might be a good way to keep him alive. But he seems super funny to use because I already had a lot of fun with Boyd and I can tell he's kind of made of the same cloth. So he seems really nice. What about you?
Yeah, I really like this unit, partially just because of the convenience and the timing on which he joins. We're about to go onto a map where cav units like kind of suck and foot units are much better. And so it helps that we get this unit who has some stats to 1 round but is still able to like move well this upcoming map. So I think like just in his joining map alone, he's worth deploying. If you don't really like using him in his joining map, then you can go ahead and bench him. The next few maps are like totally open. Calves are still really great on that. But just in his joining map alone, I think you'll get a pretty good idea of what he's about, what he's like, and whether or not you enjoy using this unit. I definitely do. I mean, like I said, he's got stats, like his base stats are good enough to be one-rounding lots of things. His bulk is a slight issue. I would suggest not even trying to improve it. Like, I think saving like a Draco shield for this guy is just a completely foolish errand. Like, your 10 defense to 12 defense, I don't really think is going to realistically improve his survivability.
No, usually
just deal with it, basically.
Yeah, if the enemies have like low attack values, it can be like worth it. But if you're up against a tiger, it's probably not going to make a difference.
Yeah, no, like bumping the enemy's attack down from like 32 to 30 is like, it doesn't really do anything.
But I think like the Lagoose Guard could legit help him a lot, because if you bring like 30 damage down to 15, that is a big difference.
That's true. I hadn't thought about that, but I think that's actually like a really good thing to do.
I have 2 anyways, so it should be fine.
Might as well give him.
I think this map has some Lagoos, so it might...
Wait, wasn't one of them on Lucia?
I think I traded it away before she died.
I hope you did.
Yeah. I'm gonna be honest, I forgot I killed Lucia. No, I think so. Alright, how about we do the other guy while we're here in this stat analysis thing. Where did I put him?
So.
He's over here. I gave him some gear, but he only comes with the steel bow and the brave lance you see here. Joffrey. I used to think Joffrey was very, very good, and now I just think he's good. So a slight, lowering of his team, but not a whole lot. You can probably tell why just from his base stats. Unlike Largo, he does have like ample defense at base. Like 21 is an insanely high number for almost any unit at any point in the game, I feel like. It's like one of the stats they don't really give you a lot of. Then everything else all around is also good, including movement. Like this chapter, it's going to suck. It's like Sicilia joining a desert map. But after that, it's going to be fine. The one thing that really limits Joffrey, unlike a tier list discussion, is availability. But other than that, he's just fine. And the great thing about Joffrey, in my opinion, is that he has Paragon, so he grows twice as fast as other people at the same level. He's actually like roughly the same level as some of my other paladins, but I gave him the Night Work because if I expect any paladin to get levels in a chapter like this, it'd be him, because he gains double experience, and that can get him going really quickly. So another nice low resource kind of unit. You don't really have to do anything to make work. I would have preferred if he had like axes instead of bows, but it can still be helpful sometimes to snipe wyverns, or use like accurate 2-range to chip enemies down before you kill them. My experience with Joffrey is that he generally doesn't one round a whole lot of stuff, but if you really want him to, you can use like a Brave Lance or a Silver Forge to make him. But other than that, he still does like roughly the same amount of damage as other units, maybe a little bit less. Like I think my Oscar's about 20 strength, but it's not bad enough to be like a hindrance. It's just not good enough to be an absolute carry, but still a great filler unit. If you lost a lot of units or if you just want something different, he's there for you. I feel like he's really nice. He's just not around a whole lot. What about you?
Yeah, I feel like he's really nice too. Again, basically the whole discussion about the tier list is availability. But if we just consider the chapters where he's available, like his stats are good and he's in a great class, so it's really hard to be bad under those two circumstances, right? Like I think a couple chapters ago we got Haar, and we basically had like the same discussion about Haar, where like, yeah, his stats are pretty good and he's in a good class, but we don't really know if he's that good. And in the past 2 chapters, he's been kicking ass.
Yes.
So like, here now we have Jeffrey, who's got good stats and a good class, probably going to be really great. Yeah, except for this one chapter, like you said. I do think the Paragon, even though he's like, you know, level 11, and you think, oh, there's not much room to grow, the Paragon still activates like quite frequently. Like even a level 11 promoted unit is still getting some decent experience during this part of the game, and level ups are always nice. His growths are like pretty decent, if I recall. Let me pull them up now.
Yeah, it's that, and he also faces a lot more promoted enemies than most other characters would. Like I think we see more promoted enemies at this point in the game than ever, so that also helps.
Yeah, so in any case, like him having Paragon, it's pure upside. Like don't look at it and be like, oh, well, it's wasted on a level 11 promoted unit. Like no, he's still got some growths to go.
Yeah, it's actually like kind of tricky to cap out units in Path of Radiance, I find sometimes. But if you want to cap someone, it better be someone with Paragon.
There you go.
She is
Let's
right here. Princess Crimea, aka Pegasus Knight with staves and a game over condition. Very fun unit to use. I used her in my last Iron Man playthrough. I was going to say her growths are really good, then I looked at them again. She has a 30% strength growth, so now I'm not as convinced anymore. Just have 80% magic growth, so if you can get her to use the Sonic Sword, I guess that is one way to do some major damage. Unfortunately, it's going to take 2 arm scrolls, I believe, because damn, she's a D in swords at base, and it's going to take a while to raise up. I can tell you right now, I'm not using Illyana this playthrough, and not just because I can't be bothered, but also because I missed out on a meaty because we killed Lucia earlier, so can't show that sword off. If you play Radiant Dawn, you might expect the meaty to be good, but it's not because this game has like 5 or 6 might or something. It's still brave,
like
and still weighs her
sword.
down. Yeah, it's awful. And like her strength base is awful too, so she's not a very good combat unit, but she's a good staff unit. She has an A rank in staffs at base, which is excellent. Her magic is like okay, it probably goes up a lot if you actually use her. But at the very least, like, she can use the rescue staff to move units around as a flyer. She can heal people, recover, a Shira staff even if you want her to. Stuff like that is pretty excellent utility, because like no one else in this game has a good base staff rank. You got like sages that if you promote someone into a sage, you still have to make them work to use like high rank staffs, and she just has them at base. That's pretty cool, I think. I still don't like deploying Illyana because the game over condition is so stupid for like Ironmans and stuff. But there's no denying she has some like unique utilities for her name. Most of it doesn't work, but some of it is cool. Also, technically, she can triangle attack, I think, but I think only in the next couple chapters do you get an info convo to unlock it. So even that meme takes time to get going. Everything about Illyana just takes time to get going, but if you do it, it's super fun. It's just very, very risky. Have you ever tried using Illyana?
Yeah, I've done a lot of like different strategies and different like builds and approaches to Illyana. I really do think the one where like if I'm just putting my like objective, you know,
Oh no.
like pure math raisins hat on, then I'd probably say just like leave her at base, because like, you know, she's got A rank stabs, 12 magic is good enough to use a lot of things like, you know, mend or physic or fortify, and that's like good enough basically. I have had some fun doing things like backstabbing her to 20 straight away and see what she can do. It's not a lot, but you know, it's still fun if you want to go ahead and do that. So I do think the most efficient thing to do is just treat her like a 0% growth unit and be like, all right, sweet, and have a flyer with stabs. Like, this is just fun utility. Like a couple of the units we had in our Thracia playthrough is like, yeah, their stats are basically irrelevant for what they're going to do coming up, or they meet some weird benchmark.
Yeah.
I do wish we had Amity so we could show it off, but like, to be honest, there's not really much to show off. We'd show you what 0 times 4 is equal to. That's about it.
This is Anna the way that you get her, and obviously these are untransformed stats, and it's going to be hard to get her transformed in this map because I don't really plan to train her. I did that in my Iron Man playthrough for a little bit until unfortunately she met her end in the final chapter because of my arrogance. So this is Anna the way you would probably see her a lot of the time. I think what I'm going to go with is this Anna with a Demiband equipped, and I will transform her. Or it should. There you go. And this is probably the Anna that you're going to see if you're like not using any other Lagoos and you just want to try her out for a little bit. Which are, honestly, these stats, when I looked at them the first time, I was like, okay, that's actually pretty impressive. Her breath weapon is still, you know, Lagoos. It's 1 range in this game, unlike in Radiant Dawn. So still locked to 1 range, not forgeable or anything like that. So it's still going to be less powerful than most of your units. But when I looked at these stats the first time, actually trying to see like, hey, how good is Anna? I wasn't actually super not impressed. I was actually kind of impressed because the strength and defense and HP in particular are really good. The res is really high. It's just her speed is really bad, so she can't double anything. But she does have enough bulk to survive, enough like damage to chip or like tank in any phase. I think the plan for that playthrough in particular was to give Anna the skills I just gave to Ike, Wrath Resolve, and just have her go to town, maybe kill Ashnard. And it almost worked out, but unfortunately she got hit by a bit too many things, so she was in the right, right HP range for Wrath Resolve, but also the right range to die. So you gotta be a little bit careful still. She's supposed to be a fail-safe for if your Ike is not good enough to beat Ashnard, in which case you get Anna. If you do beat the Black Knight, you get Nazir instead, who I don't have a stat screen for, unfortunately. But they're basically the same unit, so it doesn't really matter that much. Dragons are cool, but not very good in this game. Don't really have a whole lot of utility. I never really use them much, but they're fun novelty units, I think. But that's about all I could say about them, really. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, they are a very fun heap of stats. I will say, again, it's kind of the same story we had with Haar, where we looked at these stats, it's like, yeah, they don't really look that good. And then we, used Haar, and he ended up being pretty good. I feel like this is kind of the same thing, where you look at these stats and like, oh, these stats actually look pretty good. So I have a feeling that she's going to end up being pretty good. Demiband is a great choice. Just go ahead and like use it. I mean, at this point, maybe you're gonna still be using it on Muarim or something, but honestly, just put the Demiband on her. Forget about it. It ends up being just totally fine. I do want to take a look at her skills. So her skills, she has like
kind of a nice suite. It's not like Radiant Dawn where she has Red Pool or the thing that gives you plus strength and plus skill. She doesn't have anything that amazing.
Yeah.
But she has these. To be honest with you, I oftentimes end up just kind of like removing these skills because a lot of times they're annoying to like see the renewal animation or like, I'm not going to watch I'm not going to count on Miracle to proc, right? Although I think it's only 5 capacity, so like maybe it's not really that bad. But honestly, if you want to seriously use her, I'd say like you get rid of some of these skills. They're not really that good. Boon is like it's what a restore staff if she's next to someone.
Yeah, it's like I think it's just the same as in Radiant Dawn, where you put it next to someone. If they get put to sleep, she just wakes them right up, which is kind of cool in this chapter actually.
It's kind of cool, but like just buy a restore staff.
Yeah, it's true. Have to get share
you
staff
have
still.
money.
Yeah. It's not very practical. It'd be like if it was like FE6 where you have like 5,000 enemy status staffs like raining down on you, then parking her next to a staff user would be really nice, right? Because you could just cure the status staff user, and then they can restore someone.
Yeah, that ends up being pretty cool in Radiant Dawn. Like that's a nice thing to do. There's also several turns in Radiant Dawn where like everyone gets hit by a status, so like might as well. Like might as well have her nearby. Overall, she's like an okay unit, I'd say. Like, just between her stats, between her skills and whatnot, she's okay.
Yeah, she's not very memorable, is she? Because she's like not around for a whole lot, and she's not very good when she is around.
Yeah, I mean her animation takes a long time, so
it's a lot of screen time technically.
I know.
That doesn't mean she's good. Gifka is meant to help you against Ashnark, but as you saw, he didn't have him for his first phase, which is kind of when you need it the most, because you can't get to the second phase without the first one. So, I think he's pretty bad, all things considered. Like, and as far as like being a Goto kind of character, I think the Laguz Royals are pretty shit. Like all of them, because they don't help with the first phase on hard mode. In normal mode, they're like fine for that purpose. Hard mode, no, they just don't help. But for second phase, it can be nice to have Gifka to like help negate the like healing of Ashnard if you want to take him down. Like if he's not proccing ether, you don't have ether, like he can do that kind of stuff. Like he does damage to Ashnard, which is all you need. I don't think he doubles, but he does like a decent chunk of damage. Nasala and Tabarn have more trouble doing damage. I think Tabarn doubles but doesn't do enough, and then Nasala does like jack squat. He does like less than Ashnard heals. So they're like Garbo, but Githa I think is alright for that purpose. And the Goose Band is like a Demi Band, but they get full transformation bonuses, so they're basically like Form Shift from Radiant Dawn. But yeah, I think Gifka's kind of a non-unit almost. He kind of doesn't exist for 99% of the game. The 1% he exists for is kind of alright. But like to get the point where I'm at, there's like 5 enemies on the map, and 4 of them are about to die. so yeah, not very good.
I guess in this sense, there maybe is a decision to be made for transfers, and I know Gifka, he gets this strength transfer, which is actually kind of big. It's like, what, +4 damage on each attack?
Yeah.
In Radiant Dawn, and he usually doubles, so it's like +8 damage on all attacks.
It's a big transfer.
It's a big transfer. I know it's possible to get T-Barn some transfers. He joins at level 19, so you kind of have to do a little bit of work.
Oh, geez.
But
the Calill moment.
Yeah, just do it. Also, I'm very glad you took the time to put his growth rates on here. That's very important information for this guy.
I love the 160% HP growth.
Yeah, just in case.
I mean, it's just showing his history, but why couldn't they just get +2 HP one more time for the 69 HP?
Just once. But no, it's I mean, as far as the Royals go, I guess, yeah, if you're playing on normal mode, there is more of a decision to be made because you actually have them on the map. Gifka has like the strongest combat. T-Barn has the strongest mobility. Nasala, I guess, can attack at 2 range. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And he gives you a coin. he gives you a coin.
Yay!
Which someone in chat mentioned. Woo! You get another steel sword forge in the Grail Mercs in part 3. Massive. But
I mean, what if it's Twin Sword, right? What if it's Twin Card?
True. Hey, yo, you won't unequip the Laguz Band on him.
Unequip him with Laguz Band and put him in range of Ashnard.
Oh, in range of Ashnard? No, I mean, he probably lived that, right?